Okay, the round is now being live streamed. Um, I just want to say a couple of things. Then I'm going to pass things over to your parliamentarian and we will get going from there. First off, congratulations to everyone on advancing to the final round of the Middle School Tournament of Champions in 2022. Everybody, please give yourselves a round of applause on all of your hard work paying off. You should be very proud of yourselves. This round should go on without this round should go out very similar to how all your other rounds have gone off. You have two presiding officers in here. You have Selena Chen and Anna Liu as your two presiding officers. Your parliamentarian will flip a coin shortly after I am done talking, and they'll determine which of the presiding officers will speak first and which of the presiding officers will preside first. That'll be the point. At that point, the round will be, you guys will be able to set your docket. The round should be able to begin shortly after that. You have 6 judges in the room. Please ensure that your judges are around at all times when you start speaking. I don't want anybody dropping out by accident because of Wi-Fi issues, and then we begin the round and they're not there, or we begin a speech and a judge misses part of it. That does cause unfortunate confusion. So let's try to avoid that. Please check around for your judges before you start speaking. Other than that, I just want a very clean, fair, fun round. I think I'm very excited for what this round will hold. If there are any issues or questions for Tab, your parliamentarian knows how to get a hold of me very quickly, and I'll be able to pop back in. Our goal for this round is getting everyone 2 speeches. 24 speeches in total are allocated to this round, enough for everyone to get their 2. We do have a hard cutoff at about the packet is about 5:30. We will try to cut off this round. So let's try to get 2 speeches in within that margin. Does that sound good to everybody? We can do that? Okay, awesome. Be prepared to flip. Let's not have any issues where we have, lopsided sides. That would be unfortunate in a final round like this. Anyways, I'm going to let y'all go unless there's any questions for me at this moment in time. Okay, I will let your parliamentarian introduce your judge panel, get the paradigms. Thank you all. Best of luck and have a great round.
All right. Hi, everyone. Again, to reiterate what Tab said, congratulations on making it to the finals of the middle school TOC. The judges are incredibly proud of you, as is tournament heads, my bad. So with that being said, in terms of pre-round, I'm going to go ahead and designate the PO, then get judge paradigms, and then allow the PO to sort of go through docket order and things like that. So there are going to be 2 options this round for POs, Selena Chen and Ann Liu. Senator Chen, which side do you pick of the coin?
I'll take heads.
Okay. Senator Liu, you would be tails. I'm going to go ahead and flip the coin. It is tails. So Senator Liu, you'll be first, followed by Senator Chen in the second legislation. So while Senator Liu gets ready, I'm going to go ahead and ask for judge paradigms. Of course, I'll start. My name is Jamil Jackson. I'm a congressional debater from Arkansas. This year is my final year debating before I transitioned to New York for college. So I've been debating on the national circuit for 2 years. And those 2 years, I got 10 bids, making me state's record holder. I qualified for Nats and Senate both years, and I made it to out-rounds, speaking and POing at tournaments like Harvard, the Glenn Brooks Nova Titan, the season opener, and others. Most recently, I was a semifinalist at the TOC. So yeah, at this point in the tournament, we should expect a certain level of refutation past, basically the first or second speech. Make sure you're referencing the framework established at the beginning of round. If there isn't any framework, make some. So yeah, congrats to you guys for being here. And I'll pass it off to Tyler.
Hi, y'all. My name is Tyler Liu. I am from James Logan High School. I have collected what I think is 6 bids over the course of this year. A little bit about me. I am the Emory champion. I took 2nd at the MLK Invitational and 4th at the High School Tournament of Champions. I am actually really excited to be listening to all of you today. Things I really like to see and really value. Warranting, of course, explain to me stuff, your card, tell me what happens, why it matters, and especially prove to me the effect of the legislation and what that means. Terminal impacts, the really good or really bad of this legislation. And of course, rhetoric and entertain me. I know it's like tossed to the side. We consider Tournament of Champions to be super flow, but still, I want to see something about your speech that speaks about your personality and tell me why you care about this legislation. Otherwise, good luck to everyone else.
You could just popcorn into someone if you want.
And I'll popcorn that into Anish Biram.
Howdy, everyone. I'm Anish Biram. I'm a current high school debater and a junior at St. Mary's Hall in San Antonio, Texas. I've been debating for 3 years. Most recently, I championed the high school tournament of champions, as well as placing 3rd place at Emory. So your entire judge panel is very experienced with debate. I'd say the thing I care most about as a debater and as a competitor and congressman is strategy, i.e., it doesn't matter where you speak in the round to me, as long as you do what the round needs and fulfill your place in the round, whether it's a sponsorship or a crystallization or late round speech, as well as telling your judges and everyone else in this round why what you're saying matters, what is the impact of this, what is the terminal reason why we should care, and how does this impact tangible, common people, not just theoretical impacts. I look forward to a great debate, and I'll hand it off to Sarah.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm a sophomore at Saline High School. I've been doing congressional debate for 2 years, but I've been debating since middle school. I recently finaled Emory and Harvard and semifinaled TOC as well. So with me, I'm similar to Anish, where no matter what speech you give in the round, as long as you're fulfilling that job, you'll rank like well on my ballot. So if you give a good sponsorship and it fulfills the role of a sponsorship, you'll do well. Crystal obviously have a ton of ref in there, but I also don't want to hear like line by line ref. It should be like the formatting of a Crystal that you've seen in other rounds. With that, also, I do want to hear like good emotion in your speeches. I don't want it just to seem like you're reading off a computer screen, even though we are online. So that's pretty important to me, like not just the point in your speech, but how you deliver it as well, showing that you care about it. And then impacting is also really important. I'll pass it off to Sarayu.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Chimalapati. I'm a junior. I go to Council Rock High School North in Philadelphia, and this is my 4th year competing in congressional debate, finaled at Princeton, New York City Invitational, semifinaled at UPenn, Emory, and as well as the Tournament of Champions. I look for a good presentation, overall good argumentation, to echo pretty much what all the other judges said. Clash and refutation after the first sponsorship is really important to me because it is congressional debate, not necessarily congressional oration. I also, I'm not a huge fan of rehash, like repeating arguments after like people already said it and calling it your own. So that's basically what I look for in speaking. POs should generally just know the procedure, try to make as minimal mistakes, make sure the round runs as smoothly as possible. I trust that you all know what you're doing since you're at the final round of the middle school TOC, and best of luck. I'm definitely looking forward to hear what you all have to say. Lastly, Anisha.
Hi everyone, I'm Ifa Anisha. I'm a congressional debater at Little Rock Central in Arkansas. I've been debating for a few years, qualified for NATS TOC, state and national level tournaments. I want to see debate that's moving forward, which means enough clash to keep new arguments coming in, as well as little rehash as possible. I'm sure y'all know that as you're in finals. I also want to see that you're engaged in the debate, you know what you're talking about, and you're very knowledgeable about the topic. As for PO, no parliamentary procedure, keep the debate moving forward. And yeah, that's it. Good luck, everyone.
So with that being said, a couple of final reminders, of course, for in an online forum. So I would ask the PO and everyone in chamber to keep in mind that turning your camera off unexpectedly should not be permitted. Please ask to leave the chamber when you need to. And this is something that I'm sure the PO will know and reiterate. Yeah, if everyone is ready, I can go ahead and pass it off to Senator Liu to go ahead and start.
Thank you so much, Carly. So I thank the chamber. For the reference of everyone, I will be known as Presiding Officer Lou. My pronouns are they, them. My main targets for this round are running an efficient and equitable round. So I choose speakers and questions randomly since there's no recency from last round, and then we'll start to build a recency as the round proceeds. Before each speech, please make sure that your judges are ready. You can always assume that I am ready. During the questioning period, please raise your placard visibly and keep them up while others are questioning. Most of the time, I will choose questioners in one order instead of one after the other, so please be sure to raise your cards early. So moving into time signals, this green card is 2 minutes, this is 1 minute, 30 seconds, so on. And then this is 3 minutes, and I'll count up to 3:10, and then I'll gavel you down. Questioning is pretty similar, so I'll just avoid reiterating myself, but I am kind of harsh when it comes to cutting people off. So you have like a 3-second grace period maybe, but then I will cut you off even if you are mid-sentence in the interest of equity. Moving on, are there any questions, concerns, or accommodations I can answer or make? Senator C. Chen.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, do you have a online recency sheet?
Yes, I will put that in the chat now.
Thank
There you go. And just for clarification, there are two tabs at the bottom. One is speakers and the other is for questions. Are there any other questions? With that being said, I call this Chamber of Congress into order. Are there any motions on the floor? Senator Park.
I move to open floor for docket nominations.
Is there a second? I will now entertain docket nominations. Does anyone have a nomination? Senator Cabra.
I motion to nominate docket A, consisting of first a bill to Western Hemisphere Security Strategy Act of 2022. Second, aid enhancement for Latin America and the Caribbean. And third, a bill to extend asylum protection to victims of domestic violence.
Okay, I'm just going to type that into chat. That is docket A. Are there any other dockets? Seeing no other docket nominations, the floor is now closed. Senator Chen?
I was just going to motion to close the floor for docket nominations.
Okay, seeing no other docket nominations, the floor is now closed. Docket A will now be our set docket. With that being said, we're going to move into the first order of business, a bill, the Western Hemisphere Security Strategy. Is there an affirmation speaker who would like to give us the first sponsorship? I'm calling for a sponsorship for the Western Hemisphere legislation. If there are no sponsorships, we cannot move on. Is there anyone who would like to give a sponsorship at this time? Senator Q?
I
All right,
thank the
the
chair
floor is
and for the
yours.
clarity of, thank you. I thank the chair and for the clarity of my judges and chamber, my name is Senator Q, spelled Q-U as in the letter Q in the alphabet. This is my first time speaking in this legislative session. As I speak at the leisures of those above me, judges and PO, if you can give me any indication that you are ready, that would be great. Thank you. Timer begins on my first word. Deterioration of democratic governance and security in Latin America profoundly affects the US, not only through our investments in supply chains, but it also affects our migration flows, fueling the current border crisis, drugs, which killed over 100,000 US residents just last year. Senators, it is time to relook our current circumstance and pass this bill because it allows relief in this area for numerous constituents being affected. To begin with, this bill is the key to development of US national security. While senators on negation might say that this bill isn't effective, nonetheless, if we fail this bill, we won't have an effective counterplan. Because even if we do take them in the future on the highest ground, failing this legislation doesn't make the status quo any better, so there's no harm in trying. In fact, recent attempts were too narrow in scope, but going forward with this bill and specifically allows the future to go ahead. Global Americans on February of 2016 states, contemporary United States security policy towards the Western Hemisphere had yet to achieve the level of strategic sophistication seen during the Cold War. Instead, much of our security orientation in the region has centered on narrow-bore specific policy interests, namely countering drugs and terrorism, neither of which have improved the overall security of our partners in the hemisphere. However, this bill will not do that. Senators, this bill is very specific and it will help these people who are suffering. This means that the US security policy in the hemisphere would prioritize working with these governments of the region that share its interests, which in Section 2 and 1 states, because Section 1, as I quote, it will enhance cooperation with the Western Hemisphere. And Section 2 states, all things in the Western Hemisphere and the US would jointly try to solve all these problems. Secondly, the greatest threat to the Western Hemisphere security is Latin America. An increase in crime, corruption, migration, and the ongoing crisis in part of Latin America have spilled over its impact to the US and other Western partners. The diplomat on 2022 states, Latin America and the Caribbean, to which the United States is intimately linked by ties of geography, commerce, and family, currently faces an unprecedented conflux of challenges, potentially affecting our security and prosperity, as well as those of our neighbors. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated endemic problems in the region, profoundly affecting the livelihood of economically vulnerable populations, increasing inequality and insecurity while fueling the migration to the US. Senators, because today's bill is a collaboration, one that benefits all of our constituents from ours and other countries, pass not only for our constituents, but for deleted benefits to others too. Affirm.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Again, that is 2 minutes and 40 seconds. All questioners, please rise. The chair recognizes Senators Chang and Chen. Senator Chang, go ahead.
Senator, you state that corruption exists in Latin America, but why has the government not been able to fix this issue themselves?
It's because, as I stated in my first contention, it's because previous attempts have been too narrow and it didn't cover all the aspects, which is why we haven't been able to solve it.
But today's bill forces the US government to work with their government. What ensures that this will actually work, given that they haven't been able to?
Because today's bill will allow them to further collaborate, as it states in Section 2, which would jointly try to solve all the problems we're facing today.
All right, thank you. Senator Chen.
Senator, what does Section 2.3 of this legislation say?
2.3? Well, 2.3 of this legislation says the Department of State and Department of Defense shall jointly be responsible for the implementation of this act.
No, the Section 2.3 says that we'll be trying to disrupt illicit trafficking of drugs. So in your speech, you mentioned that drug policy hasn't worked in the past. And if this legislation is doing the exact same thing, why are we going to see any impacts?
Well, it's because past attempts haven't been trying to work with the government enough. But this section, as stated,
so you're telling me that we should work with corrupt governments like Senator Chang mentioned previously?
No, what we're trying to do is trying to help the constituents.
Thank you. Are there any other questioners? Senator Xiang, go ahead.
I thank the chair. Hi, Senator. Great speech. So when we collaborate, as you say, with these corrupt governments, doesn't that further legitimize them as now they have our stamp of approval?
But senators, if we don't collaborate with these corrupt governments, there's no way we can help our constituents relieve from the burden. So the only way is to first collaborate and then try to solve the problem.
Before we collaborate, though, shouldn't we make sure that they're not corrupt?
Well, to make sure that, we have to go through all these extra links, but right now our constituents are suffering, which is why we should pass this bill.
But if collaborating makes them more corrupt.
All right, thank you. There's one more questioning block. Would anyone like to question the speaker? Senator Xiang, would you like to continue your previous line of questioning?
Sure, why not?
All right.
Okay, so to finish my previous question, if by collaborating them, we further incentivize their corruption and we legitimize that, doesn't it make it harder for future efforts, for future anti-corruption efforts?
Well, I don't see how this would affect our own government from being corrupt, but
I'm talking about the anti-corruption efforts in Latin America.
Well, even if the government, are corrupt in other parts of the country, our constituents are the one who's suffering from this. So by collaborating with them, we're helping our constituents, even though it's a cost, it's a needed step forward.
All right, thank you. All senators may be seated. Seeing as that was the first F, is there someone who would like to give the first negation? I'm calling for the first negatory speech on this bill. Senator Chang, you stand unopposed. Go ahead.
I thank the chair. Can you just give me a quick moment to set up real quick?
Of course.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, for the reference of the chamber, I am Senator Chang, speaking for the first time in this legislative round on the negation side of today's bill. If my judges and my PO could just give me a quick thumbs up, also my parliamentarian, that would be perfect. All right, seeing as though everyone is ready, I'll go ahead and time will start on my first word. Having just gotten into my office this morning, my interns were briefing me on the legislation to be debated. However, after reviewing today's legislation, I was shocked. Never in my 10 years as a senator of California have I expected Congress to attempt to pass such a bill. Senators, first, because US military is controlled by itself, and second, the military is overrun by narco groups in Latin America, negate. First, today's bill emboldens US soldier abuse. Section 2, Part 5 explains that efforts to build the defense and security capacity of partner countries and expand bilateral and multinational military training exercises with partner countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. But expanding military exercises is dangerous because the US military normalizes assault against civilians. The Guardian explains in July of 2019, operating under the Status Force Agreement, US armies are granted diplomatic immunity, preventing prosecution under the law. For example, in Latin America, it is only permitted that Colombia's government has the right to expel them from the region. This incentivizes abuse. Der Spiegel highlights this past April, more than 118 US soldiers were found having sexually assaulted minors, but 0 prosecutions were made. Understand, US forces are inclined to commit abuse under the guise of legal protection, destabilizing communities and hurting innocent civilians. Second, the government is overrun by narco groups in Latin America. Section 2 of the legislation of the bill outlines that America will be working in partnership with Latin America countries in the Caribbean in institutional capacity building efforts. Senator Chu champions during her speech and cross-acts that collaborating with the corrupt government is the key to solving all the corruption. But what she doesn't understand is that working with corrupt governments won't solve anything, as currently roughly 95% of all cocaine entering the United States flows through Mexico or its territorial waters, with 60% of that cocaine entering the United States and Central America. Furthermore, Vox detailed in 2020, Latin America's governance is controlled by narco organizations. Their sway over national democratic politics through the use of channels of high-level corruption and influence and economic fallout without assistance. Yet, in the Western Hemisphere, specifically Latin America, corruption systematically pervades all layers of government and all law enforcement institutions, a situation that may have well persisted for decades. Understand, we will be working with the government, which is infiltrated by bribery and politicians who support narco groups, thus making it completely improbable of solving the current issues that currently pervade as a result of narco groups. Senators, for these reasons, negate.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 6 seconds. Again, that is 3 minutes, 6 seconds. All questioners, please rise. The chair recognizes Senator Cabra and then Q, and then Chen.
Hi, Senator, great speech. But if we aren't using diplomatic ways to negotiate with Latin American countries, how are we going to solve the narcotics crisis?
Senator, it is not the job of the negation to provide an alternate solution, but rather to prove that passing today's bill is going to cause more net harm.
But at the same time, there are no other solutions for this narcotics crisis. Like, how else are we supposed to collaborate with countries?
Once again, as I stated, it is the job of the negation to prove that there is more of a net harm passing today's bill than not passing it.
But how does the—
Senator Cabra. Senator Cabra, do you wish to question the speaker?
That was my question.
Oh, Senator Q.
Hi, Senator. Following the previous line of questioning, without any alternative, how do you ensure the safety of our constituents?
Senator, like I stated in my speech, today's bill is going to cause more harm than good. Would you want to pass that and hurt our constituents? For example, in section 1, in my first point, I state how these military operations will hurt the people living in Latin America because the soldiers will abuse the people in Latin America. Do you think that is fair to them?
No, Senator, but how do you think it's fair for our constituents to be suffering from Latin America? We need to work together, or else what other way is there?
All right, thank you, Senator K. Chen, and then Park.
Hi, Senator. Great speech. Because threats from China and Russia are increasing in the area, shouldn't the U.S. maintain its influence?
I do agree that U.S. should maintain its influence, but today's bill is not the answer because it hurts the people in Latin America.
And are these reasons that they're hurting is because of the abuse?
Passing today's bill is going to hurt them because of the military abuse that is done by soldiers as seen in Colombia.
Right, but if there are very small cases of this happening, it's not like that's happening to everyone.
Senator, it's not just small cases. It happens every single time. For example, in Okinawa, it also happened.
Senator Park.
Hi, Senator. Great speech. Can you quickly tell me what Section 2.4 does in this legislation?
I'll go ahead and read that for you. Section 2.4 states that the United States Agency for International Development shall oversee the distribution of the funding.
No, Senator. Section 2.4 says that it's going to increase activities to increase transparency in the government, solving every one of the impacts that you brought. How does your case still stand?
What you state does not matter in today's debate, because what I have stated is that these narco groups are still going to be the main funders and the main distributors we're talking to. And if they take our funding away, this bill doesn't solve anything.
Thank you. All senators may be seated. Seeing as that was a negation speak, are there any affirmation speakers who would like to go now? The chair calls for affirmation speakers on the Western Hemisphere's bill. Are there any speakers who would like to go on the affirmation? Are there any negation speakers who would like to go now? Are there any motions I can entertain? Senator C. Chen.
I motion for 1 minute in House recess.
All those in favor? Any objected? Okay, motion passes. 1 minute.
Okay, so it was my interpretation that we had a very even split on this topic.
Yes, I think people just don't want to go earlier.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. Let's just like do a really informal split again. Like, who's going to speak F who hasn't spoken already? Like, just raise your hand.
Count. I can count. All affirmation speakers. I count Senator Long, Cabra, K. Chen, Fan, and Guo, and Park. That's 6. And then all those wishing to go on negation, I count C. Chen, Lam, and Xiang, which means that there should be an affirmation speaker ready to go. Oh, and Senator Q.
Point of order.
Yes, go ahead.
Is it possible for a speaker to go both sides, or can they only choose one?
I think the chair highly frowns upon going up on 2 different sides on the same legislation.
You could, but
it's just
also,
not
I think
in
the
your
judges,
favor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and interject and say that should not happen. Do not do that, please.
I mean, you technically could. It just would not look good for you.
Okay, I didn't put for both sides. I was just asking.
With that concludes our 1 minute recess. I call this Chamber of Congress back into order. Are there
Senator
any?
Liu? Senator Liu, really quickly, I believe we had sort of like a parliamentary inquiry at the end of it by suggesting that it was able to do that. I believe technically even like you're not allowed to do that. So I will text Tab to make sure that that's correct. But in the meantime, please refrain from like speaking on the same side.
Okay. Thank you very much, Parley. With that being said, I'm calling for any affirmation speakers who could go now. Are there any affirmation speakers who would like to make a case now? Are there any negation speakers who would like to make a case now? Are there any motions I can entertain at this time? Senator C. Chen.
I motion for another 1 minute in House recess.
Go ahead and make that longer, like 2 or 3.
2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, sure.
Are there all those in favor, please raise your placards. Any objected? All right, 2.5 minute recess starting now.
Okay, so we have 6 people on the affirmation.
Exactly. There's really no one who wants to go. What if we table this bill first and then come back to it once everyone is ready for another speech?
To sort of eliminate any confusion, it doesn't seem to be an issue of the bill itself, but rather wanting to speak early. So I want to say that like choosing to speak early, it won't hurt your ranks. Also, obviously, it's much better to go ahead and change your speech to an early round speech for the sake of debate. We absolutely cannot just sort of like table bills at will, move to the next bill, and then have the same problem. So
I would, especially since the splits for the next 2 are worse, I think we'll encounter a worse problem with those.
I would just highly encourage anyone who's asked to please go ahead and make that early round.
We could probably extend the recess if the judges and the party and the PO are okay with that. If somebody wants to just write their speech.
Senator Chen.
I think I can give an affirmation speech.
Oh, so right now?
Yeah.
All right, that's great. So are we keeping the recess or is there a motion to end the recess early? Senator C. Chen.
A motion to end the recess.
Any objections? I see none. Therefore, I call this Chamber of Congress back into order. Are there any affirmation speakers who would like to speak now? Senator K. Chen, you have the floor.
I thank the chair for the chamber's reference. I am Senator K. Chen, spelled C-H-E-N, again, C-H-E-N. This is my first time speaking on the affirmation. Time starts on my first word. Without Latinos, Hamilton would not have been written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Kind bars would not have been invented by Daniel Lubetzky, and US Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor would not have been elected. These are just a few successful stories of Latino descent. Latin Americans have a lot to bring to the table, and while their pop culture is accepted in the United States, foreign policies towards Latin America and the Caribbean countries have been largely neglected over the last 2 decades. Today's bill sets us in the right direction to change. Firstly, the balance of power must be kept. This is true because China and Russia have increased their presence in the region. According to US News, destabilizing influence of authoritarian governments in Beijing and Moscow pose unique risks to US national security interests, as well as the region's welfare. Marco Rubio states there is no greater threat to our region than the growing meddling of Russia and China in Latin America and the Caribbean. China has invested $160 billion in the region since 2005. Their economic influence has grown in the LAC, and their strategic positioning is expanding. Relations between China and Latin America have kindled, and if the United States does not step in now, we run the risk of losing influence over the region to other countries. Senator Chang on the affirmation even agrees with this. Deterioration of democratic governance and security in Latin America, in turn, hinders the US through investments, supply chains, trade, and oil shipments. But second, affirm this bill because the region is strategically important to the United States. This is true because it strengthens relations with the region and brings new focus to Latin America. The diplomat found that migration flows fueled the current border crisis. Drugs killed over 100,000 US residents last year. Due to rampant violence, chronic poverty, failed harvests, and climate change, entire families have made the difficult decisions to leave Central America and flee north. In the past 20 years, the United States had not established a coherent policy or given these territories proper attention because it was focusing primarily on Europe and Asia. Since the Cold War, Latin America has grown its agricultural capacity immensely, and oil reserves have made the region much more favorable. The United States has neglected Latin America and the Caribbean, and this bill is the solution. Senator Q dabbles on this, but let me explain why. What the region needs is not only aid, but more importantly, a concrete strategy they can follow. This helps attack the fundamental issues the area is facing. This comprehensive Western Hemisphere security strat plan will have the most benefits. Pass this bill so a step can finally be made in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 51 seconds. Again, that is 2 minutes, 51 seconds. All questioners, please rise. The chair recognizes Senator Lamb.
Hi, so historically, how has US aid impacted Latin American countries?
Historically, we have sent them like single aid packets and they have not worked.
Right. So what about in terms of propping up dictators in places like Venezuela? What has happened there?
You tell me.
So the US usually is out for their own interests, and this bill has sections that just reinforce that. So how is this going to be beneficial mutually?
Because it's an entire comprehensive plan. It's not just one act, so it'll have the most benefit.
All right, thank you, Senator Fan.
Senator, so America has aid programs in Latin America, right?
Yes.
And why haven't they been effective?
Because they're single plans and because of the government.
So America only has one plan in Latin America right now?
No, they're like standalone plans. They're not a comprehensive plan where there's like a bunch of benefits to it.
And how would a bunch of singular benefits put together solve the issue?
Because they direct the attention to they help the government show how to use the aid instead of just giving them the aid and then it just goes to waste.
All right, thank you. All senators may be seated. Seeing as that was an affirmation speech, are there any negation speeches at this time? I'm calling for any negation speakers who would like to go now.
Before we move on to the next speaker, I want to interject and say that Tab has pointed out that although, yes, technically it is possible to speak on the same side, we cannot and should not because it would mess up speech equity, which is something that sort of like is paramount, especially in finals. So yeah.
Thank you, parliamentarian. With that being said, is there a negation speaker who would like to go now? Seeing no negation speakers, are there any affirmation speakers who would like to go now? Seeing no affirmation speakers, can I entertain a motion? Senator Lamb.
I move for a 2-minute recess.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, that motion is passed. 2 minutes in-house recess.
Okay, so I think on the negation, we have myself, Senator Lamb, Senator Xiang. Am I mistaken?
I think that's correct.
Okay, I could give my speech, but to be honest, I do probably still need like 2 or 3 minutes of prep time. So if there's anybody, I don't want to take any more time out of the round than necessary since we've already had so many recesses. So if there's anybody else who could go, that would be great. Worst case scenario, I can go though.
I think it would be very nice if you went. If there's no one else who went, I'm sure the judges and the chamber would greatly appreciate your efforts. And we do have about a minute of recess left if you'd like to use that to your advantage.
I also want to clarify, I think a lot of the judges would appreciate if we keep the cycle going. So more speeches to fit the cycles would be very appreciated. And if we won't like prefer if you speak later, like every speech is rewarded.
My main problem with going now is like, honestly, I started this debate without any prep in finals because I was not expecting to break here. So I've just been writing my entire speech. So I do still need a few minutes probably. That's all right.
Yeah, for future reference though, like I would try to come into rounds prepped so that way, like, or have like at least some resources so you don't.
Yeah, I had a little bit, but not very much.
Are there, is there a motion? Can I entertain a motion to extend this recess in order to allow Senator C. Chen to finish her work? Senator Q.
Motion to extend recess by 3 minutes.
Is that okay with you, Senator C. Chen? All right, are there any objections to that time? Seeing none, we will add 3 minutes to the time that starts now.
During this 3 minutes, I really would not like to take another recess this long. So everyone during this time, please go ahead and finish your speech so we can proceed with debate. Thank you.
Presiding officer, can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
So I was wondering, when is our hard stop time again?
I believe our hard stop is around I'd say somewhere around. Oh,
It's 5.
okay. Thank you. So that's 5 in Eastern.
Okay, thank you so much.
Just an early warning that we have about a minute of recess left.
If Senator C. Chen, if you're not ready, or like, do you think you'll be ready by the end of the minute?
I think I can try. I don't want to take any more time out of this round.
Okay, because I was just saying, like, if I can go right now, if the chamber and judges want that.
That would be better for me if you're okay with doing that. Senator Xiang, I don't want to like put pressure on you when you're not ready.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I can go right now.
All right, then we will finish the remainder of the recess, and then I will call for more speakers. Thank you very much, Senator Sham.
No problem.
With that being said, that concludes our recess. I call this Chamber of Congress back into order. Are there any affirmation speakers who could speak now? I'm calling for affirmation speakers on this legislation. Senator Cobb, Senator Cabra, Senator Xiang, and Senator Fan. Senator Fan, go ahead.
My apologies. Wasn't this supposed to be a speech on the negation?
I'm sorry, let me check. Oh yeah, that it was. My apologies. Is there a speak on the negation? Senator Xiang, go ahead.
All right, is it okay if I just get a second to like set up real quick?
Of course, take your time.
All right, hello everyone. This is Senator Xiang, spelled Xiang for the reference of the judges, speaking for the first time this legislative session, a little bit earlier than expected on the negation. But as always, I'm at the leisure of those above me. So an indication when the PO is ready and PO and judges are ready, and I'll begin. All right. Senator Kay Chen talks about a new focus and direction for the Western Hemisphere. But in her attempt to follow her moral compass, she is dragging American foreign policy to the South. Senator Chu cites that there is no harm in passing today's legislation, and we can only reap the benefits because if we pass and the later submitted legislation under this bill fails to address our problems, we can always just not pass it. However, the problem with this is that when we pass, we still highlight the aid priorities of this Congress. Senator Chang on my side explains the harms of subsection 5, but I want to expand this to all of the subsections because under section 2, we say that we're planning to cooperate with these corrupt governments on a range of issues from drug trafficking to law enforcement to human rights. There's one issue though. We never bothered to address the fact that these governments are blatantly corrupt, as Senator Chang described. Now, allow me to demonstrate the impact of this, because when we pass, regardless of whether or not we follow through on passing the later legislation and the strategy, we still put our Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense stamp of approval on these Latin American governments. And this stamp of approval is important to these Latin American governments because they can, will, and have used this stamp of approval to defend their own corruption. Take, for example, President Morales of Guatemala, who was elected under extremely suspicious circumstances, yet we still signaled our willingness to cooperate with him. Now, with the leader of the free world beside him, President Morales proceeded to stab anti-corruption efforts in the back by proceeding to dissolve SECIC, a program that had successfully indicted many, many corrupt politicians. But regardless, let's take the affirmation at their highest ground and assume that the later legislation does pass and goes into effect. We still harm Latin America because in the status quo, our aid is contingent on anti-corruption efforts and transparency progress. This gave us leverage to push for better governance in Latin America, because if companies didn't comply, or if countries didn't comply, they wouldn't receive our aid. However, today's legislation removes this aid leverage by granting support and signal of approval to in subsections 1 through 6 at the same time that we're trying to resolve corruption. By doing both simultaneously, we're giving Latin American governments what they want before we ensure that they meet the criteria for receiving the aid in the first place. The impact of this is that Latin America has no incentive to make progress on corruption, because not only are there no consequences for doing so, but this legislation actually encourages them. Senator Chu, you worry about the effect that Latin America has on our national security. But understand that worsening corruption in Latin America only leaves our constituents more exposed. Democracy, not corruption, is the right direction for the Western Hemisphere.
Thank you, Senator Xiang, for that speech of 3 minutes and 5 seconds. Again, that is 3 minutes, 5 seconds. All questioners, please rise. The chair recognizes Senators Q and then Park. Oh wait, no, sorry. Senator Q and then Park. Cabra and then Park. Sorry. Senator Cabra?
Hi, Senator, great speech.
Hello.
But wouldn't you agree that this bill is trying to fix corruption in Latin America?
Nothing in this bill mentions fixing corruption first before we fix it. But even if it is trying to fix corruption, it's not offering any tangible provisions that can take us through.
Well, in section 2 of the bill, it does say that it wants to increase activities to increase transparency between countries and governments.
Right, but we're relying on cooperating with corrupt governments in the first place. So this is like saying we're going to cooperate with criminals to enforce crime. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Senator Park.
I'd actually like to rescind my question.
Of course. All other questioners, please raise your placards. Senator Q.
I believe Senator Fan has recency over me.
Senator Fan was the 10th person to ask a question. You were the 6th person. Therefore, you get recency.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Senator. You stated in your speech that we shouldn't work with corrupt government, correct?
Right.
But how do you think working with this corrupt government would harm our constituents? Because when a corrupt government wants the most benefits, this bill gives them the benefits while also giving us safety. So what's the net harm?
Well, I don't believe in giving corrupt governments what they want just for the sake of a few minor benefits, because what this means is that when we give these corrupt governments our stamp of approval by cooperating with them, we make corruption much harder to solve in Latin America in the future.
But Senator, you do realize—
Thank you. All senators may be seated. Seeing as that was a speech on the negation, are there any affirmation speakers who'd like to go now? I'm calling for any affirmation speakers who'd like to go now. Senator Cabra, the floor is yours.
I thank the chair for the chamber's reference. My name is Senator Cabra, spelled K-A-B-R-A, again K-A-B-R-A. This is my first time speaking this legislative session on the affirmation. May I have permission to time myself? And if the judges and PO can just give me any sign of indication whenever you're ready. Thank you. On my first one. Sorry. Cesar Chavez, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Ellen Ochoa, all Latin Americans that have influenced the US in countless ways. And for generations, US leaders have understood that building relationships with Latin American and Caribbean partners is integral to the success and prosperity of our region. So I stand on the firmest affirmation of today's bill for the people of the Western Hemisphere. First, this bill will economically benefit both the US and Latin America. This is true because it will support trade as well as energy. According to the Texas National Security Review in February of 2018, the United States has free trade agreements with 20 countries. 12 of those countries are in the Western Hemisphere. And every year, the United States trades almost $2 trillion worth of goods and services with Latin America and Caribbean nations, supporting more than 2.5 million jobs here in the US. But instead of a trade deficit, we actually have a $14 billion trade surplus with the hemisphere. And today we have an opportunity to further our economic partnership and the prosperity of peoples in the Western Hemisphere. The Western Hemisphere has significant potential for greater economic growth and prosperity. We will build upon the solid foundation of economic cooperation with our Latin American and Caribbean partners. Brazil, for instance, is the region's largest economy and the 9th largest in the world. The United States is Brazil's 2nd largest trading partner, with two-way trade at record highs in the recent years, totaling more than $95 billion in 2015. Basically, what we'll be doing by enforcing this bill is ensuring that trade with Latin America will be reinforced, which will only economically benefit our country and Latin American countries. Now, Senator Chang and Jiang championed the idea that working with Latin America is impossible because of their corrupt governments. However, it is one of the aims of this bill to address corruption. And according to Global Americans in 2022, US-led initiatives have played an important role in hemispheric efforts to control and sanction corruption. Examples include the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and the Global Magnitsky Act. Between 2007 and 2013, US aid funded 40 projects in Latin America and the Caribbean, including anti-corruption initiatives, through grants totaling $478 million. USAID funding has been a factor in the passage of nearly 250 anti-corruption measures across the Western Hemisphere by 2015. Much of the US assistance provided to Latin America has been channeled into investment in civil society initiatives, where such support has often been the most powerful impact. So no, senators on the negation, we are not dealing with corrupt governments. We are dealing with governments that want to fix their corruption, fix their economies, and fix their trade. So at the end of the day, recognize the impacts that Latin America have made on the United States of America and pass today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 5 seconds. Again, that is 3 minutes, 5 seconds. All questioners, please rise. Senator Guo.
Hi, Senator. So great speech. So what you're saying is that this sending US military to these areas will be good, correct?
I'm not saying that necessarily sending military. The bill isn't effectively sending US military.
Yes, but a huge part of it is military.
Well, it's going to be efforts to build the defense of Latin America and the Western Hemisphere in general.
Yes, and by building the defense of Latin America, you are focusing mainly on military, correct?
It could be through funding too, and it could be through military, but what's your point?
It's not, it could be through military. Oh, a huge part of it.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Senator Chang, go ahead. C. Chang. No, just Chang.
Oh, so C. Chang, okay.
No, I'm sorry, I meant Chang, but I thought Chang was also C. Chang. My apologies, C. Chen.
Her first name does also start with C. It is confusing. I think Senator Chang, you have the question.
Yes, my apologies, Senator Chang.
All right, thank you so much. Senator, what would motivate a corrupt country to stop being corrupt if we're just giving them money today under today's legislation?
Well, do you believe that all governments want to be fundamentally corrupt and not serve their people?
But the problem is these governments are funded by narco groups. So what would prevent them from not being corrupt?
Not all governments are funded by corrupt, but what this bill is doing is trying to find a way out for these governments.
Senator, you're not answering my question.
But your question is, if right now they're funded by narco groups, but this bill is helping them to find a different source of funding.
Thank you. Thank you. All senators may be seated. I will now entertain a negation speech. Is there, okay, Senator C. Chen, the floor is yours.
I thank the chair. For the chair and chamber's reference, my name is Senator Chen, C. Chen, spelled C-H-E-N with a C in front. Speaking on the negation for the first time and probably the last time today. So could the judges give me any sign of indication that they're ready? And if you're not ready, just like scream or something. Just force me to stop. Okay, so assuming that everybody is ready, I'll begin my speech. And PO, I will be timing myself, but I understand that your time is official. Thank you. In the semifinal round, I urge a negation vote because that legislation took 1 step forward and 2 steps back. But now I can proudly tell this chamber that because this legislation takes a solid 0 steps forward and 3 steps back, I urge a negation vote. So Senator Q seems to think that this legislation is providing a change in our aid, but Senator, that's simply not happening. Let's look at our own country for an example of that. When I read Section 2.3 of this legislation, I was horrified to see how similar it was to our own war on drugs. And as someone that has authored the legislation to end the war on drugs at previous tournaments, let me explain why that's so harmful. Senator Cabra, you mentioned in cross-examination with Senator Chang how we need to fight drugs. But Senator, let me provide you with the answer that Senator Chang failed to do. The war on drugs has led to an 8 times increase in drug abuse, a 7 times increase in minorities going to prison for drug abuse, and a series of generational mistrust in the police, along with generational poverty and trauma. The affirmation wants this problem to expand not just from our country, but into the entire Western Hemisphere. And when our constituents in Latin America are already so vulnerable, as my colleagues on the affirmation have mentioned, we fail. But not only does this legislation do absolutely nothing, let's look at the 3 backward steps it takes too. Sponsorship Speaker Q, you seem to think that this legislation has no negative impacts, telling the chamber proudly in your sponsorship that there were no harms in trying. But let's look at the harms. Here I'd like to separate myself from my colleagues on litigation. But Senator Park and Cabra, you have a point. We should take a chance at government transparency, but that doesn't outweigh the negation's other harms. The UN Office on Drugs and Crime tells us that the people who are forced into a life of drug trafficking, the most vulnerable, are the ones most negatively impacted by our drug policy. Latin American communities have been devastated by crimes and by crossfire between law enforcement and against drug cartels. Innocent people have been killed and victims arrested. Senators, let's not forget that the people who are most likely to be harmed by our policies against drug trafficking are the most vulnerable, the poor, the women, and children that the affirmation wants to protect. The UN office continues to say that a lot of drug traffickers are victims of kidnapping or other threats from cartels. So when we utilize our American strategies, the most likely thing that we see happens is that these people are left in a more vulnerable situation as they're being further threatened by cartels. But now I want to unite the 2 sides because I think we all want the same thing here, to help Latin American people. And how we do that is put Latin Americans first, not American greed, Senator Q, by focusing on humanitarian aid, not stopping drug cartels. By trying to stop drug cartels first, or by doing so at all, we are completely nullifying any affirmative benefits from subsections 2.6 and 2.7. And when we give humanitarian aid and build communities, we see more affirmative benefits, with a decrease in violence, drug usage, and cartels. So because I want to take a step forward and not 3 steps back, I urge a negation vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 12 seconds. Again, that is 3 minutes, 12 seconds. All those wishing the question, please rise. Senators, Senator Long, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Senator. Great speech. So how will negating this bill actually provide any help to all the issues that you mentioned?
I will admit that negating this bill won't provide help, but affirming this bill will make things worse. And I'd rather see a situation where we do nothing than a situation where we make things worse.
So why should we do something that doesn't change the status quo at all?
Because I'd rather not change the status quo than change the status quo for the worst. Because I'd rather have 0 impacts than -3.
All right, thank you, Senator Park.
All right, Senator, I'm going to sound like a bit of a broken record here, but tell me again, what does Section 2.4 of this legislation do?
I believe Section 2.4 makes governments more transparent.
Senator, exactly. There's going to be more transparency leading to higher respect of human rights and our own oversight over the actions taken by the government. How do any of your impacts stand?
In my speech, I agreed with you. We should have transparency. However, drug policy, even in our own country, where I would like to say we have a lot of transparency, never works.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Seeing as that was a speech on the negation, all affirmation speakers, please rise. The chair recognizes Senators Lung, Fan, and Park. Senator Fan, you have the floor.
I thank the chair. If I could just take one moment to get situated.
Of course.
Hi, I'm Senator Fan, speaking for the first time in today's legislative session. I will be timing myself on a separate device, but I do recognize that the PO's time is final. If I could get any indication when my PO and judges are ready. All right. Fool me once, fool me twice, fool me chicken soup with rice. This Congress really is absurd. We've been trying to fool Latin American countries with arbitrary programs and counterproductive policies as if the security of millions of people are nothing but jokes to us. But today, there is no room for horsing around. To protect these people, you must affirm. Now, Senator Chang and Senator C. Chen have all criticized specific provisions under this legislation. Let me simplify this bill and let me reframe today's round, because corruption is the central point and the most important one of today's round. Every other provision in this omnibus corruption is the foundation of every other provision in this legislation. And I agree with Senator Xiang and Senator Chang, but this legislation specifically combats corruption, and that's what makes it solvent. Firstly, let me frame the issue. Corruption is threatening the very security of Latin America, destroying development, economic stability, and exacerbating bad governance. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, inefficiencies and fraud in government spendings have led to a loss of $220 billion per year. People starve, and these governments seem more interested in feeding their own greed. And the most important impact is the cost of lives, as corruption has undermined rule of law and security, leading to the highest rates of homicide, kidnappings, drugs, and assault, destroying millions of lives. And now let's even take the neg at the highest point, that these provisions truly are bad. But let me clarify, Senator Q, that already tells you this is a plan. If we don't like the plan, we don't go through with the plan. But that cannot mean that we don't consider the potential for success. Under Section 2.4, we increase transparency in defense, security, and law enforcement. This is our solvency. Senator Chang, you are concerned about the government being overrun by narco groups. This is how we solve that. Through past precedents, we know that CICIG itself has already worked. Senator Xiang, you tell us, in fact, that CICIG has worked. Under today's legislation, we only expound upon its successes. And why is this important? Because we most importantly strengthen rule of law. Under CICIG, we indicted and convicted 3 presidents, 1 vice president, several Supreme Court magistrates, political party officials, economic elites, and many more. These previously untouchable public figures were finally held accountable. And the institutional reforms implemented under CICIG still remain, including more effective laws, better regulations, and stronger policing that have curbed endemic corruption throughout Guatemala and throughout Latin America. This is the effective policy that we need, and this is the critical reform that Latin America needs. Any neg advocacy is insolvent because, Senator Chen, there is inherently no harm at trying. The worst we can do is just not go through with the plan, but that cannot mean that we don't at least try. Don't be absurd, senators. Pass.
All right, thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 13 seconds. 3 minutes, 13 seconds. All senators wishing to question, please rise. Senator C. Chang.
Senator, in your speech, you mentioned that this is just a plan, right?
Correct.
So then why does subsection 8 of section 2 tell us that this legislation will be executed not later than fiscal year 2023?
Right, the purpose of this legislation is to create a plan called the Western.
Right, so if we're just creating a plan, then why does it say we're going to execute that plan no later than fiscal year 2023, in a year and a half?
Right, we're creating a plan and then executing it.
Right, but if it's just a plan, then we're passing legislation that's
it's just because it's just a plan that it's good. There's no harm in not trying a plan.
Thank you, Senator Lamb.
So when this bill states that we enhance diplomatic engagement, what does that mean to you?
You tell me.
No, I'm asking you.
Oh, we just increase cooperation with these countries.
Okay, but historically, what has it meant? It has meant that we go in there and we actually perpetuate imperialism and try to overthrow their governments and instigate coups. So
okay, but I've also already told you that there have been policies that succeed. You can't just cherry pick the ones that haven't.
But these specific lines are only increasing that amount that we're doing these types of policies.
Once again, it's a plan. These lines are not definitive.
Senator,
Pierre,
you're
you're
muted.
muted.
Sorry, my apologies. Seeing as that was a speech on the affirmation, all negation senators, please rise. I'm calling for a negation speaker. Is there a negation speaker who would like to go at this time? Senator Lamb, your speech is greatly appreciated.
I thank the chair for the reference to the chamber and judges. My name is Senator Lamb, speaking for the first time this round on the negation side of this bill.
Pio, may I interject with a quick motion?
Go ahead.
I motion for a moment personal privilege to exit the chamber.
Oh, right, I forgot to mention that. So if you have points of personal privilege, just message them to me in the chat in order to avoid these type of things. But go ahead. Senator Lamb, the floor is still yours.
Is everyone ready?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We as people personally don't like taking the blame. I know I don't, but even I have to admit that there's a time where one has to take responsibility. That's why it's so shocking that the negations advocacy has been pushing the idea that Latin America is a messed up area without saying anything about who and what got them there. This bill only reinforces this idea and gives us opportunities to continue ruining the area, all while wearing the cloak of world building or helping out a second nation and helping them reach better places. So first, fail this bill for one reason and one reason only, of how it perpetuates imperialism. Section 1 from the very beginning establishes our language when it states enhancing diplomatic engagement in security and stability and advancing United States strategic interests. This tells us already what we are going to expect from the bill, and it's that it's all about US strategic interests, or if it's not, it's about doing it in ways we like, which is historically going to these countries with military and having coups to overthrow the government. But Section 2, subsection 1, is about increasing bilateral and multilateral security assistance. Security assistance could be this language is especially problematic because it could be having these soldiers going into there. But what does this mean for the people of Latin America? The impact of these US efforts to aid these people is that it has increased the violence and poverty. Now, the flow of migrants trying to cross the border illegally is now from the poverty, injustice, and murderings of people who are the leaders of there. And this is all coming from the United States. Experts on the region argue that when politicians or activists have come forward on half of its dispossessed, the US has consistently intervened on the side of the powerful and wealthy to help crush them, or has looked the other way when they have been slaughtered. So we can see that when we try to enforce these places when we try to enforce ways that help them, we are using our own ways and our own interests. Let's have an example though. Historically, according to The Guardian in December 2017, when Manuel Zelaya, Honduras's reformist president, was seized by the country's military in 2009 and flown out of the country to Costa Rica, the Obama administration refused to call it a coup. And what do you think we called these efforts back then? Aid and stabilizing the government, the exact language that we are seeing today that gives us excuses to continue doing this. So Senator Q and Senator Chang, the negation and affirmation seems to only agree on one thing, and it's that this bill increases collaboration. But I want to provide the perspective that American aid in Latin America has never led to cooperation with the receiving country in a way that's mutually beneficial. We need to collectively, as Congress, be better at taking responsibility.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 59 seconds. Again, that's 2 minutes, 59 seconds. All questioners, please rise. Senator K. Chen, and then Senator K. Chen, go ahead.
Hi, Senator. Great speech. Do you recognize that this bill has some benefits to the people?
Sure, but I'm saying that the harms outweigh the benefits.
Right, but does it benefit the US people too?
In some ways, but I don't think that's as important as not completely destroying Latin America as we've done before.
But wouldn't the United States be increasing its influence in the area, which is good?
That's the issue that I'm talking about. We are so focused on increasing influence that we don't care what happens to Latin America.
All right, thank you, Senator Fan. Go ahead.
Hi, Senator. If today's legislation is only to create a plan, how is any of the language definitive?
Thank you for bringing that up. When we create strategic plans, we are meant to follow them, and the government is expected to implement them. So not only do we display to the world what our plan is and how it's continuing this trend of bad things for Latin America, we're also setting us up for failure in the future.
Right, but this legislation is literally telling Congress to make a plan. These are only the outlines for the plan to make. How are any of like the definitional terms you state
it's
solved?
asking the plans, it's already setting the plans to go in a specific way, and that's towards
All right. Thank you. All senators may be seated. Seeing as that was a speech on the negation, is there an affirmation speaker who would like to go now? Senator Park, go ahead.
I thank the chair. For the reference of the chamber and the judges above me, it's Senator Park, spelled very simply P-A-R-K, representing the fairly smoky and hot state of California. Just any indication from the judges and PO if they're not ready, just right now. Okay, I'll assume everybody is.
Give me
PO. Oh, all right. All right. PO will also be timing myself, but I do acknowledge that the PO's time is official. And on my first word. Senators, the negation today seem to have a blind spot for the number 4. Their entire case centers around corruption and being the kryptonite of this legislation. The governments of Latin America may be corrupt, but under strict US oversight and strong anti-corruption efforts, the status quo can get better. The negation is trying to prevent a status quo where everyone enjoys a better life. So today, pass this legislation because the negation brings fundamentally unsupportable contentions and because the human impacts of this legislation are immense. So first, let's follow the yellow brick road and consider what exactly this legislation does to make both Latin America and America as a whole a safer place to live. As Senator Xiang and Cheng graciously provide, the current status quo is abysmal. As a Georgetown University in April of 2022 explained that sadly, Latin America is losing its fight against corruption. The region, never a model of transparency, has seen an explosion in corruption during the COVID pandemic, as presidential power expanded and government sidestepped standard procedures to speed public spending on health and economic emergencies. 3 international anti-corruption offices in Central America were recently disbanded, and the Biden administration has found few partners in the region to revive the US anti-corruption strategy. While these senators see the problems, they fail to see the future when this legislation is passed, and most importantly, when Section 2.4 is implemented. Senator Cheng and Chen, Section 2.4 of this legislation explains that we'd be expanding, and I quote, activities to increase transparency in and support for strong and accountable defense, security, law enforcement institutions through institutional capacity building efforts, including efforts to ensure respect for internationally recognized human rights and direction and oversight by civilian authorities. This legislation already takes every one of Senator Cheng's and Xiang's impacts and makes them a reality. Every impact that these 2 senators brought up get destroyed under this legislation. But let me be the first senator on the affirmation to truly come back down to earth and consider the true human impact that this legislation would have by providing this baseline transparency to this region. As the economic quantifies, in 2018, Latin America was home to 8% of the world's population, but 37% of its murders. Cartel violence in large, as provided by the Courier Journal in December 22nd of 2020, still remains at large because of corruption being virtually untouchable by national governments. Corruption has long been endemic from public sectors to private industry and is unlikely to be completely stamped out, but reducing it is key to weakening cartels and putting power back into the hands of the people. At the end of the day, this legislation, the negation is making the perfect be the enemy of the good. Senators, please, let my constituents live in a future where they are happier.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Again, that's 3 minutes, 10 seconds. All questioners, please rise. Senator Guo, go ahead.
Thank you. So you talk about murder in the region right now. How would the US military be able to fix that?
Well, Senator, as I already explained, murder because of cartel violence in large can't be curtailed because of the large amounts of corruptions having these murders go virtually unnoticed.
Okay,
Fighting
so when
corruption is the biggest way to counter that.
Okay, so when the US military goes in and directly involves with the US cartel.
No, Senator, the US military won't be enforcing the law. These institutions, which should be helping with their corruption issues, will be enforcing the law.
We will be helping those institutions.
Well, I cannot
All
answer
right,
your
thank you. Senator Xiang.
Hello. Hi, Senator. Great speech. So, is collaborating with a criminal to enforce law effective law enforcement?
Senator, what criminal are we collaborating with?
Just in general, just collaborating with
of
criminals.
course
Is that
not,
effective?
but governments
Okay, so
cannot be
why is
attributed to a single
collaborating?
criminal.
Okay, I'm glad we agree on that. So why is collaborating with corrupt governments to solve corruption effective anti-corruption?
All right, Senator, first off, we're the ones enforcing strong anti-corruption, and we're the ones who can enable this oversight. After
But you
that,
just
we
said
can
in your
guarantee
speech that
government
Section
sovereignty.
4 means we collaborate with these governments to solve corruption,
Yes,
right?
Senator, and after we've taken those actions against corruption, then we can restore that much sovereignty back.
All right, thank you. All senators may be seated. Seeing as that was an affirmation speech, are there any negation speeches? Is there anyone who would like to make a Oh, thank you. Senator Guo, go ahead.
I thank the chair. For the reference of the chamber and judges, my name is Senator Guo, speaking for the first time today on the negation side of this legislation. I will assume that all of my judges and PO are ready unless I receive any indication otherwise. All right, on my first word then. As one of the last speakers in this round, there's not much unique value that I can add to this debate. So allow me to sum up all of the arguments and impacts of today, and let's weigh both sides together. All of the affirmation arguments today revolve around the US's political power, and the negation focuses on the morals of sending military aid. In the affirmations world, they champion that when we pass this legislation, we are securing our influence in the region, focused mostly on by Senator Q, Cabra, and Kay Chen. However, just like previous negation senators have brought up, we end up only doing harm to these regions with our military. As negation senators have previously brought up, we are only increasing anti-US sentiment. Take the example of US military presence in Okinawa. Our US military did the exact same thing to the Japanese as they have done when sending foreign aid to regions in the Western Hemisphere, just like this bill does. And now we are not only at risk of having our military removed, but also we're losing influence in the region. As the Guardian reported just 2 days ago, 70% of Okinawans were in favor of fighting the Hinako movement, which brings more US forces onto their local land. Compared to if we didn't try to force our influence in Japan, we would still be on good terms with the citizens of that country. The impact of this is that anti-Americanism will sell, something that Senator Lamb is exactly right to be concerned about. When regions in the Western Hemisphere are against the US, this is the perfect time for Russia and China to swoop in and act as a good guy, the very concern that every single affirmation senator has cited. The reason that the negation wins every aspect of the debate today is because political balance doesn't matter when the region is harmed. We need to prioritize the impacts of confluence rather than blindly trying to force our influence into the region, rendering every affirmation case useless. During cross-ex, I asked Senator Cabra whether or not the US military will be involved in this legislation, and she argued that this bill will mainly focus on providing economic and government transparency. However, understand that when you say that it is to provide defense to these countries in the Western Hemisphere, military will have to be a very important aspect. Now, when Senator Chung comes up here during cross-ex for an alternative solution, she was unable to come up with an answer. And allow me to tell you, sending military aid is the best form of dominance, but sending economic aid is even better. Senator Fan, you talk about how corruption is the most important aspect of this legislation, but you fail to realize that we can still have that without all of the net harms of military aid unique to this bill. Senator Fan also states that there are no negatives to this bill, but negation senators have come up here one after the other, explaining how US military has destabilized the region. Senators,
Let's compare these two worlds again. Forced political dominance and influence that will definitely be unappreciated versus a guaranteed success with economic aid when you fail. The entire affirmation case is now useless because we will receive none of the net benefits of the affirmation, yet all of the disadvantages of the negation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that speech of 3 minutes and 12 seconds. Again, that is 3 minutes and 12 seconds. All senators with questions, please rise. Senator Cabra and then Senator Senator Cabra and then Q.
Hi, Senator. Does this bill ever explicitly state that the main source of assistance provided will be military assistance?
Okay, hi. Thank you for asking that. Well, there are 8 sections listed in, I believe 8 in section 2, right? And all of them state that we will be strategically trying to influence our dominance in the region. And even if by sending economic aid, how will that help?
You said it yourself. Economic aid is the best way to help
Latin America. I said that it was the best way to make them like us, not to make us ruin the region even more.
All right, thank you. Senator Park. Oh, no, my apologies. Senator Q.
Thank you. Hi, Senator. You stated that by passing this bill, we are only increasing anti-US sentiment, but how would this happen when this bill is to benefit both parties by listing everything in section 2?
Okay, yes, but it doesn't benefit both parties when the US military is wreaking havoc in these regions by not only hurting the women and children, but also every single citizen.
But Senator, you do realize that military aid isn't the only one we're giving, right? We're trying to solve all the problems like drugs, like the corrupt government. How is military aid the only, how is this?
Yes, it's not the only aspect, but it is the most important aspect and the aspect that holds the most merit in this case.
All right, thank you. Sorry, all senators may now be seated. Seeing as that was a negation speak, is there an affirmation speaker available? Senator Lung, go ahead.
Thank you. So hi, everyone. My name is Senator Lung, spelled L-U-N-G, and I'm speaking for the first time this legislative session on the affirmation. And if anyone's not ready, just let me know. Okay. From the earliest years of elementary school to present-day middle school, the one thing that has always seemed inherently wrong to me was what I and many others were told in response to the problem of bullying. Just ignore it. And it is disappointing to see that that situation is mirrored in our Congress today. First, Latin America and the Caribbean are in need of help, but the negation still makes excuse after excuse to do nothing. Senator Chang, corruption is an issue, but I still don't see how passing this legislation will make the situation any worse when the negation wants to just ignore it and let it get worse when the affirmation is specifically addressing that issue. Senator Si Chen has also conceded to the point of transparency and mentions that we should be providing humanitarian aid, but that is precisely what we are doing in Section 2.6. What the negation is really doing is leaving the wound in Latin America and the Caribbean to fester. And it is the people in this region who are still suffering every moment that we choose to delay. Let's take the example of violence against women. The United States Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean in November of 2021 urges us to recall that in the year 2020 alone, there were 4,091 women at the very least who were victims of femicide in the region. Senators Guo and Chen, this isn't just about a war on drugs. This isn't just all about our military. In Section 2.6 and 2.7, we provide humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, and we support the women and girls of Latin America. There's so much more that is at stake that this bill is trying to improve. If we fail today's legislation, it is telling countless people that we're willing to place our own benefits and interests over their lives. We also need to take a moment to stop and look at the Latin American governments who can and have been doing better. The Center for Strategic and International Studies in April of 2021 details that tens of millions of people in the region have been lifted up out of poverty with the government's help, or how Chile enforced a COVID-19 vaccine program that was able to provide vaccination doses for its entire adult population of around 15 million people 2 times, and so much more. Senator Xiang, what you are trying to get us to do is completely dismiss the needs of the people and villainize every one of these governments without giving a second thought to the constituents who still depend on them. As the affirmation has already told you, we as a government are already successfully working with Latin American governments and bringing countless benefits to both ends of the partnership. The negation is still blinded. Furthermore, the Council of Foreign Relations finds that this region is the biggest supplier of oil to the United States and a firm partner in the development of alternative fuels as well. We have been working with them and we have been working successfully. And Senator Guo, anti-US sentiment will only grow if civilians see that we aren't even trying to do anything for them when we hold their fate in our hands. So no, we still cannot just ignore it. For the people, you still pass.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 55 seconds. Again, that is 2 minutes, 55 seconds. All questioners, please rise. That goes, that goes Chang Si Chen.
Senator, we provide Latin America governments with money, correct? And aid under today's legislation. All right, so how can you ensure that government won't use it for themselves?
Because we're partnering together, right? So we still have like an ability to help regulate that. Because we're not just throwing money at them this time, we're providing money and we're also providing our assistance in
Plan
partnership.
doesn't outline that we have to get a benefit from it. It just says that we're going to give money to them. So how can you ensure any of this is true?
What do you mean by that?
I mean that under today's legislation, it's the government. We don't have to force it.
My apologies to cut you off. Senator Si Chen, go ahead.
Thank the chair. So, Senator, in my speech, I mentioned that women are the most vulnerable to being the victims of our drug policy, which we're implementing in subsection 2.3. So how does your argument about saving women still stand?
Because in section 2.6 or 2.7, we're still like specifically addressing the problem of women and girls being like abused in.
But wouldn't that at best completely nullify and provide the affirmation with no benefits if we're harming women and helping them with the same legislation?
How would it do that?
Because as I said in my speech, the people who are most vulnerable to our drug policy are women and children.
But it's not just about drug policy,
thank
it's about
you.
specifically helping them.
Thank you. All senators may now be seated. Seeing as that everyone in this round has spoken, we will now unilaterally move to previous question. All those in favor of affirming and passing this bill, please raise your placards and keep them up until I call your name. The chair recognizes Senators Long, Cabra, Fan, and Q, Park, and Chen. That makes 6. I will now vote for, no, sorry. We now need negation. So if you vote negation, if you are on the negation of this legislation, please raise your placards and keep them up while I call your name. The chair recognizes Senators Chang, Lam, Xiang, Guo, and Chen. I believe one person has then abstained or I missed a vote.
No, there are 11 voters and then you, the presiding officer.
Right. I'm sorry. So in that case, this legislation does pass. My congratulations to the author, to the sponsor. With that being said, I would just like to go over my orders of the day before I pass this on to the next PO. So we got through 26 questions and 11 speeches. Judges, parliamentarian, if you believe that I did a good job as presiding officer, I hope that you will consider ranking me within your ranks. It was an honor to preside and serve over this chamber today, and good luck. With that being said, I turn it over to the parley.
Thank you so much. Senator Si Chen, if you're ready, you're more than welcome to proceed with presiding. But I think for the sake of comprehensive discussion about speaking order and splits, which I would highly encourage the chamber to have, I would suggest that you give the timing and procedure spiel after a recess I think we should have.
Yeah.
So you can go ahead and
I do also need a few minutes to set up my recency sheet with the previous, like copying things from previous senders. So are there any motions? Senator Capra.
Motion to move to a 5-minute recess.
Seconds. All in favor? Are there any opposed? All right, seeing none, this motion passes. We're now in a 5-minute recess. Please come back at 1:30 Pacific time, which is 4:30 Eastern time. And maybe for the competitors, come back in like 3 minutes so we can talk about splits at the end of recess. As the recess ends in 2 minutes, I'm asking that the competitors come back so we can talk about splits. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. And then first, quick question to the former presiding officer, if they're here. You're here, okay. Do you have questioning recency or did you just use precedence?
So for recency, I don't know if you still have my chart open, but you know, like the list of numbers with people's names. So that's the order that it went in. So like Senator Chang got the question first, then so on, then so on, then so on, all the way to the end. So there should have been 26 questions.
Right, but since everybody has one question now, do you have recency for past the first
What do you
question?
mean? What do you mean?
It's like, normally what I do is like, I move the name from one column to another in the order they ask questions. It's like, I know Senator Chang asked the very first question, but then just asked their third question, while Senator Cobra asked the seventh question, but asked their third question before Senator Chang. So
I did not keep that type of order. I just kept like recency throughout.
All right, in that case, I'll just use precedence for questioning, if that's okay. I don't want to make it unfair to anybody.
Wait, really quick, something that might help is if you just like unblack your PO sheet, like I think that would give a decent order potentially.
My PO sheet?
Yeah, like unquestioned.
The black parts are, it just goes in the order of like, so there's nothing underneath.
Right, so then is it okay to the chamber if I just use precedence for questioning? And if you're tied with number of questions, I'll just pick randomly because we don't have the recency, unfortunately. Is that okay for everybody? All right.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, I mean, okay. So obviously recency would be preferred.
Yeah.
But considering we don't have it, like I'm not even sure what you would be able to do other than
I
that.
could start counting recency now. That might be a little bit confusing.
I think for continuity, maybe we shouldn't. So just continue, it's fine.
Okay. Well, recess has ended. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to talk about splits. Somebody wants to extend the recess to do that, or we'll have to begin debate. Senator Liu?
In the interest of not creating more recesses, I move to hold a recess of 2 minutes in-house.
All right, do we have any seconds? Any opposed? All right, seeing none, the recess has been extended by 2 minutes. So the recess will go until 1:33. All right, so from what I thought I saw when we took splits at the very beginning, we did have a majority. We did have a pretty bad split on this topic. But Senator Xiang, do you have something to add?
Yeah, just points of inquiry. Maybe I'm missing this, but is your PO sheet in the chat?
Not yet, because I was still editing it with the stuff from last time.
Oh, okay, no problem. I was just checking.
I'll put in the chat right now. There it is.
Could we take the splits again just to see if anything changed?
Yeah, so everyone on the affirmation for the Latin America bill, can you like raise your placards? So it's me, Senator Lung, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then everyone. Negation, yeah.
I believe the affirmation.
Okay, it's 5-5.
That's a very even split.
Yeah.
Oh, 5-6. Well, good enough. I think we are allowed to have 2 negations back to back at the end. Of course, it's ideal if the last negation speaker does flip, but
one thing I'd like to add, do we got first half and neg? Because if no one's going first neg, I'm fine for that one. But do we have like a first half so we don't have to?
Oh yeah, do we have somebody who wants to sponsor?
If no one else is doing first half, I will be willing to adjust the round. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we're set for that one then.
And then hopefully we don't run into the same problems last time where nobody wants to speak at all in the first 3 cycles. Okay, well, the recess is now over. It's 1:33 Pacific time. So
if I could interrupt, sorry, but just a note from Tab, I preemptively extended our time to 4:20. So
4:20.
Oh, CST. 4:20 CST.
So that's 2:20. Well, that's only 50 minutes. We won't have time to get through a full cycle debate, like a full 11 speeches.
So our time originally was for CST, I can pull up the chart, but I presume you guys know your time differences. That was definitely not, considered we have 30 minutes left now. Now we have 50. Do you think that's enough? I think it should be.
Probably not, to be honest, because that's like,
Okay, well then
it is
I'll,
like 4 minutes per debate cycle.
Yeah.
Like per speech.
I'll just ask for an extra 10 minutes then.
Okay. Okay, well, we kind of have to hurry up then, since our hard stop is pretty soon. So then do we have any motions? All right, seeing none, hearing none, now I'd like to call upon anybody who wishes to speak on sponsorship for the second topic on our docket, which is final C, the aid enhancement for Latin America. Anyone who wishes to sponsor, Senator Guo, you stand unopposed.
Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, good. I'm just checking. Again, Chamber, my name is Senator Guo, that is spelled G-U-O, speaking for the second time today as a sponsor for this legislation.
Oh, wait, Senator, before you start, I just realized I forgot to tell Chamber my hand signals. So when you have 2 minutes remaining, I'll give you a 2. When you have 1 minute remaining, I'll give you a 1. 30 seconds remaining, I'll give you a C. Then I'll count you down from 10 and then back up to 10. Then I'll cut you off at 3 minutes and 10 seconds. For cross-examination, I'll count you down from 20 seconds, so down 10. And then I'll give you a grace period about 3 seconds, and then I'll verbally cut you off. All right, Senator Guo, sorry, you can continue now.
All right, I thank the chair again. Is everyone ready? All the judges and PO? I'll take silence as an indication of yes. All right, thank you. Then on my first word. Today's debate will revolve around which world is better. The affirmation world when this bill passes versus the status quo. I'm sure we are all aware of the current situation. Latin American countries are in poverty, their citizens struggling. The main negation case today will be that this foreign aid will go to corrupt officials. However, Section 3A specifically addresses that, starting with verification of the proper use of funding through monthly reporting from various governments. Senators, we need to stop making useless excuses and lend these struggling countries a helping hand. Because first, principally, you passed to assist Latin American and Caribbean economies that were worsened by the pandemic. As Harvard writes in July 2021, COVID-19 has rampaged in Latin America, killing 1.3 million people, fueling recession, and unleashing widespread political upheaval. Protests over inequality, slow growth, and corruption have intensified as people have taken to the streets to demand economic assistance, the very thing that we can help with. Courthouse News reports just 3 months ago that 5 million more people now live in extreme poverty than in 2020, rising to a 13.8% of Latin Americans. The impact in an increase in poverty is further quantified by the Economic Commission in Latin America and Caribbean just last year, in which they reported that this extreme poverty has caused a 27-year setback in the development of these countries. Senators, this foreign aid comes at the perfect time to help readjust our constituents' lives and bring them onto the right track. So when negation senators nitpick about oversight, realize that this affirmation will still win on the framework of improving the lives of 664 million people. Now, second, you passed today's legislation because of Section 2, which states that 40% of the funding will be directed to small and medium-sized enterprises. In Latin America, local businesses are the largest part of their economy. Take Haiti, for example. The Invest Initiative in December 2020 in Haiti, small informal businesses generate up to 80% of new jobs. And although they are the backbone of the local economy, small businesses regularly face difficulty accessing finance from formal institutions. By helping to finance these local businesses, we create more jobs and opportunities for all the citizens of Haiti. So now, how will we know that U.S. aid into these sectors will work? Take past presidents into account. With U.S. and international support, the State Department in March 2020 reported that 27,000 jobs were created through programs to improve private sector competitiveness, and another 14,000 jobs at the Caracol Industrial Park in northern Haiti,
This will not be an isolated case. The impact of this is that this bill will help many escape the middle income trap that affects the citizens of most of these Latin American countries. My bill solves uniquely for that by increasing economic growth, because as American University found, the main factor that leads to the middle income trap is a slowdown in growth due to an inability to achieve continuous improvements in competitiveness and productivity. Therefore, I stand on the strongest affirmation and pass today.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 10 seconds exactly. Again, that is 3 minutes and 10 seconds. All cross-examiners, please rise. Senator Kay Chen, you stand unopposed.
Hi, Senator. How will funding small enterprises help decrease migration to the United States?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
How will funding small enterprises decline the amount of migration to the United States?
Oh, thank you for asking that, because by financing these small businesses, just like I stated in my speech, you create new jobs and opportunities. And when the conditions of life are better at home, they will be less likely to migrate into other countries because their conditions in their country are actually livable now.
Thank you. Senator Pham.
Senator, under Section 3A, who is giving these reports?
Let me pull that up. Sorry about that.
Well, I'll just tell you then, from the various governments that we send the funding to. So how is asking the very governments we're sending the funding to verify their use of funding going to prove accountability?
We will also oversight these accountability. You can't assume that we will.
You're asking these governments to report, right?
Yes, they will report, but also the United States will also make their own analysis based
How?
on
When we're using the reports that
Thank you,
these
Senator's
governments make.
cross-examination has elapsed. Senator Park.
Hi, Senator. Can you quickly explain to me what happens when foreign aid is given to countries with little to no economic foundation?
I'm assuming that you could tell me.
Well, Senator, here's what happens. These countries develop an economic reliance on the United States because they replace progressive policies such as taxation with our aid. How can you guarantee that won't happen in the Latin American area?
Because we as Congress, we are in charge of the funding. We choose where this funding goes. If we do realize that these countries are not doing
Yes, Senator, I understand that, and this aid will be going to these economies, but how do we know?
We help these countries.
Senator Xiao.
Sorry.
I thank the chair. Hi, Senator. Great speech. So where are the regions that we see the highest migration from? The poor regions or the richer regions, or relatively richer regions?
I would say definitely the poor regions.
That's actually not true. We're seeing the highest rates of migration from the wealthier provinces of Guatemala. So when we decrease poverty, as you say, wouldn't that raise our migration rates?
Why is decreasing poverty technically a net harm?
Because when we raise our migration rates, don't we fail to deliver on the 30% criteria that this legislation proposes?
Thank you, Senators.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Guo. You may now be seated.
I
All right,
think
the chair thanks you. So seeing as a speech on the affirmation, all negation speakers, please rise. From those standing, Senator Q, you have the floor.
I thank the chair. And for the clarity of my judges and chamber, my name is Senator Q, spelled QU as in the letter Q in the alphabet. This is my first time speaking in this, the second time speaking in this legislative session. As I speak at the leisure of those above me, judges and PO, if you can give me any indication when you are ready, that would be great. Thank you. Timer begins on my first word. As Albert Einstein once said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Senators, we have tried to, in the past, enact aid enhancement for Latin America and the Caribbean, but most, if not all, failed to achieve its intended goals. To this, we must ask ourselves, why? The answer is simple, because it neither had the intention of helping the other country, and instead it sugar-coated its words we negate. To begin with, this failed to work in the past. When we see that the US assistance to Latin America and the Caribbean begin to decline in fiscal year 2011, there's a critical reason for this. The decline is due to reflected changes in the region of Latin America. Although Senator Guo states that this would help Latin Americans in poverty, this hasn't worked before, and our current circumstances show no need. Allow me to explain. According to the Congressional Research Service on January of 2021, due to stronger economic growth, and more effective social policies, the percentage of people living in poverty in Latin America fell from 45% in 2002 to an estimated 30% in 2019. In the past, we have continuously tried to help Latin America and the Caribbean solve their problems. However, current circumstances show there is no need. Additionally, according to CPER, in March of 2020, in recent years, the US government has tried to implement sanctions against these Latin America and Caribbean countries. In all three cases, the official purpose of these sanctions is to advance human rights and liberal democracy, and to weaken the government of a so-called Latin America troika of tyranny, in former National Security Advisor John Bolton's words. However, in all three instances, these sanctions ended up violating human rights of ordinary citizens while failing to produce political change advocated by US administration. Senator Guo fails to realize this in her speech, which she champions the idea that it would be helping Latin Americans, but in fact, it does the exact opposite. Secondly, these countries don't want US assistance. Senator Guo brings up the point that this would help smaller companies and other constituents and countries, but allow me to be the first senator to present a surprising fact. Latin America doesn't need our aid anymore, so why should we keep on giving them something that's unwanted? The US Secretary of State on February of 2020 reads, countries such as Bolivia and Ecuador expelled US personnel and opposed US assistance projects, leading to closure of USAID field missions. Additionally, these changes resulted in the US government concentrating foreign assistance resources for Latin America and the Caribbean in fewer countries and sectors. Senators, although the affirmation senators championed the idea that passing this bill would help Latin American constituents, these are nothing but fallacious claims. It is no different from past legislations, which has not worked before. Senators, because this bill fails to meet its intended purpose, we would fail today.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 55 seconds. Again, that is 2 minutes and 55 seconds. All cross-examiners, please rise. Starting with Senator Lamb.
So you talk about how Latin America doesn't want aid and provide the evidence of them asking to remove personnel. How is that the same as monetary aid?
Well, because personnel aid is also related to the US, monetary aid is also related to the US. So both of them are correlated.
Right? Military aid has its effects on them as they have to actually go there. Monetary aid lets them have the money and provides them with help.
But Senator, how do you know that this aid would actually go towards the government and not some corrupt people?
All right, thank you. Senator Guo.
Hi, so you just told us in your speech, you claimed that there was no evidence of previous economic aid working, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, but did I literally not just tell you in my speech, like moments before, that it has worked before and created 27,000 jobs at the exact same time?
But can you state the source and date of your evidence again?
Yes, of course. I can even post it in the chat if you would like me to. This happened, I believe, just last year, and it was by the State Department in March of 2022. In 2020, sorry.
Thank you. Do we have any further cross-examiners? Senator Guo, Senator Copper.
Hi, Senator, great speech. But you talk about how poverty rates have fallen, but isn't that also a direct result of monetary assistance?
No, that's incorrect, because since the Latin America people don't want US aid anymore, it has continued to grow by itself.
But you claim how is it magically getting the funding it needs to make poverty rates fall?
It's doing it by its own government and its own people, which have received enough funding, so we don't need to fund it
anymore. Where do they get the funding
from?
from? The US. So that means that
US
was in
funding
the
has
past,
worked, and now it doesn't work anymore because they have the needed.
But you just proved that in the past.
Thank you, senators. Senator Long, last question.
Thanks, Senator. Great speech. So could you please explain to me how Latin America doesn't need any monetary aid?
Yes. So in my speech, I stated from the US Secretary of State that states that the Latin America countries have removed US personnel that tried to assist them before.
That doesn't mean they don't need monetary aid. They just don't want our military in their personal space, right?
Well, as I've stated in my first contention, its economic growth has grown before. So there's no need to pass this bill.
How did economic growth happen?
It's because the Latin Americans have in the past gained enough.
Thank you, senators. All right, thank you, Senator Q. You may now be seated. Seeing the speech on the negation for completed full cycle, are there any motion on the floor? Senator Guo,
Point of personal privilege.
please state that privilege.
And to the chamber.
All right, granted. And just a note to the chamber, if you have a point of personal privilege, feel free to ask it when I'm asking for motions, or if it's an emergency or in the middle of a cycle, just put in the chat, right? Okay, so do we have any further motions? Seeing none, hearing none, all affirmation speakers, please rise. Senator Long, you stand unopposed.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Senator Long, spelled L-U-N-G, speaking for the second time this legislative session on the affirmation. And if anyone is not ready, please let me know now. All right, sounds good. All right. Time travel. It's a plot line that's been written until it's born, but unfortunately, still fiction. Whether to peek into the future or to erase the mistakes of the past, something about the concept of traversing the depths of time has always appealed to people. However, while we cannot go back to alter our history, we are here today with the full capability of changing the futures of every citizen for better or for worse with the pass or fail of today's legislation. First, the current state in Latin America and the Caribbean needs to see change. One of many such examples is in infrastructure. America's Quarterly in May of 2019 details that the amount of infrastructure investment in the region totals to $150 billion every year, but that is just 2.5% of the GDP. The United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean in May of 2017 furthers that these investments need to be at least around 6.2% of the GDP in order for the infrastructure needs to be properly met. The reason behind why this is happening is because Latin America currently faces a lack in resources to properly carry out big or complex infrastructure projects. Additionally, as for small and medium-sized enterprises, IDB Invest explains that the Latin America and Caribbean region has 27.5 million of these enterprises, but the overall funding gap is $1.2 trillion. We have the power to change that today, and we guarantee that not less than 40% of these funds will be used for that cause. The LAC will suffer in a multitude of ways if this continues on, both because of the people who are directly hurt and the catastrophic economy. With the lack of the imperative funding, households who are already in the lower 40% in terms of income will see their real income plummet by 11% within the next 10 years. The Inter-American Development Bank adds that in countries across the region, failing to invest more will result in a loss of about $900 billion following the existing levels of the GDPs. But if the funding was increased, economic productivity growth would go up 75%. Senator Q, this is not what no need for aid looks like. By passing Senator Park, we are helping these countries back to their feet, but also giving them a chance to keep going in the future with this large economic boost, not making them completely rely on us. Secondly, investing more funding can also cut down gang violence and other prevalent problems in the region. As Business Insider in September of 2019 reminds us, Latin America makes up just 8% of the world's population, but accounts for around 1/3 of the world's homicides. Back in 2016, there are about 146,000 annual homicides, meaning around 400 homicides every single day. Streets Blog Chicago in January of 2022 confirms that when Medellin, Colombia started a program that invested back in vital aspects like infrastructure, the homicide rate was reduced by 84%. By passing today's legislation, we are also providing them with more funding to be able to efficiently create more such programs that have been proven efficient. So we have certainly yet to discover technology that can give us a glimpse of the distant future, but every choice we make now for Latin America has a bigger impact on the entire road ahead. This is why we pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Again, that is 3 minutes and 10 seconds. All cross-examiners, please rise. Senator Chang, you stand unopposed.
Theo, I believe Senator Liu wanted to question.
All right, Senator Liu, I'm just asking the chamber, if you have a question, please raise your placard immediately. You can even do it in the speaker's speech if you want to, just so we avoid things like this in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great speech. And while I am on the same side as you, how are you so sure this bill will work?
Because there have been past examples in Latin America where programs have been created that, like I said, cut down homicide rates by like 84%. So if we provide them with more funding to create more of these programs, then that would definitely help the situation.
But these programs aren't the same. What ensures that this program, which is different from them, will work?
Because what they need is more funding. Like I stated in my speech, the reason they're not in a very good position right now is because of their lack of funding.
But what program ensures that they don't misuse that
All right,
funding?
thank you. Cross-examination time has elapsed. Senator Chang.
Hi, Senator. Continuing off of the last senator's question, how do you know that these programs will be effective in declining the amount of migration?
Wait, sorry, could you please repeat that?
Okay, continuing off the past senator's question, how do you know that these programs are going to decline the amount of migration?
Right, because by providing more funding with them to create like more infrastructure and stuff like that, it generates more jobs, right? And without the incentive to have to find a better place to live, which is our nation for a lot of the people, then there will be less migrations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so seeing as that was speech on the affirmation, all those who speak on the negation, please rise. Out of those standing, Senator Chang, you have the floor.
I thank the chair. Would you just give me a quick moment to set up? Is that all right? Thank you so much. All right, for the reference of the chamber, I am Senator Chang, speaking for the second time in this legislative round on the negation side of today's legislation. If my judges, PO, and parliamentarians just could give me a quick thumbs up to show that you're ready, that'd be perfect. All right, seeing as though everyone is ready, I'm gonna go ahead and start on my first word. Today's legislation is like syrup. It'll create a sticky mess because first, Senators, today's bill is illegal under the current appropriations bill amendment process, and second, lacks sufficient oversight, negate. First, today's bill is illegal under the current appropriations bill amendment process. Senator Lan and Guo championed the benefits of today's bill. However, as Section 1 entails, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2022 is amended to provide $400 million in supplemental funding to the USAID for the express purpose of supporting Latin America and the Caribbean, which would mean the redistribution of money in the Consolidated Appropriations Act under Section K, which deals with foreign affairs. Unfortunately, the money in Section K has already been pre-assigned to certain programs. This means that we would be taking money away from highly valued programs. To circumvent this problem, the bill would attempt to redistribute the money from other programs defined in the Consolidated Appropriations Act. However, as Section 4 explains, the Department of Homeland Security will report to Congress on the efficacy of the program, and upon receipt of reports from both agencies, Congress shall make the determination whether to appropriate supplemental funding. Unfortunately, when amending appropriations bills, they may not appropriate funds that have already been appropriated in a prior fiscal year. Given this bill will be passed in the middle of a fiscal year, it will not fulfill the standards of the prior fiscal year, therefore make it inherently illegal. Passing today's bill creates a precedent that the standards of law are useless. Second, USAID is incapable of auditing international finances. Section 4 of the legislation leaves USAID in charge of handling the distribution of the funding and will verify proper use. However, a 2021 GAO report explains the federal office lacks stable accounting systems and has consistently failed in tracing funds diverted through international programs, such as when they lost $446 million in food assistance for Syria to an unidentified NGO that was providing food kits to members of ISIS. This has devastating consequences. Senator Guo states it doesn't matter if we implement today's bill and the actor is not qualified. However, given that the USAID has no proper way of verifying NGOs, Homeland Security, who is supposed to report back on the efficacy of the aid enhancement, will be foolishly lied to. Today's bill forces Americans who have less than $400 saved in their bank to pay for this, wasting millions of taxpayers' money that they need in order to survive. understand that narco groups prevalent in Latin American countries will be able to frame themselves as civilian organizations to access the aforementioned aid enhancement. And given we are American senators, first and foremost, we need to ensure our American people's ability to survive. Senators, negate.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes, 10 seconds. Again, 3 minutes and 10 seconds. All cross-examiners, please rise. Of those standing, Senator Lamb, you have the floor.
Hi, so you mentioned corruption. Isn't that exactly why Section 3B implements this solution that checks on these companies to make sure that it's actually providing benefits?
Senator, I'm glad you add that question because under the Privacy Act of 1947, what the USAID can do is they can obscure vetting, meaning they don't have to give information about what they do and what they do not do. They only have to give part of it. Therefore, they are allowed to legally pretend as if they did something when they haven't. For example, Syria, that's what happened. Also, they have no way to check up on our...
Is that really a problem with this bill or the USAID in general? That we
All right, thank you, Senator. Senator Guo.
Okay, so even if, great speech, first of all, but even if I take you at your highest and assume that Section 3A does matter, there is another way to determine the efficacy, is there not?
You tell me.
Well, Section 3B, it can be shown through a 30% decline in migrations to the United States.
Here's the deal. Although I do understand your point, the Privacy Act of 1974 allows the USAID to basically say what they want and not show the rest.
No, you're not answering my question. There is
Thank you,
another way.
Senators. Thank you, Senator Chang. You may now be seated. All right, so seeing as that's a speech on the negation, if we complete a full cycle, are there any motions on the floor? Seeing none, hearing none, I'd like to call upon anybody who wishes to speak on the affirmation. All affirmation senators, please rise. Again, I'm calling for all affirmation speakers. Senator Lamb, you stand unopposed.
I thank the chair. For the reference to the chamber and judges, my name is Senator Lamb, speaking for the second time this round on the affirmation side of this bill. Just give me a second. Okay. The majority of my side's advocacy so far has been about the general need for aid as well as the general effectiveness of aid. Let me today use this 3 minutes to narrow down our view to the exact type of aid that this bill generates and how its increased focus on small businesses is the most beneficial thing we can do for Latin America. So first, pass this bill because this bill improves aid instead of just giving aid. Right now, despite Senator Q's characterization of aid, it has already been effective. The United States Agency for International Development reported on the results of the last 60 years of aid and found that assistance has helped infant mortality fall faster in Latin America than anywhere else in the world, declining by 70% since the 1960s. So when Senator Liu asks an extremely important question of how we know this specific aid will work. The answer is that it focuses on small businesses that are less corrupt while also implementing measures that will actually help. According to Princeton survey, nearly half of Americans said small business owners have high ethical standards compared with only 6% of those who say the same about CEOs of major companies. The survey found only 7% say that small business owners have low ethics compared with 48% of who think the same of corporate CEOs. The impact is that while large corporates often pull the strings and bully people from calling out their products, small companies have to adapt and change. According to OECD 2018, SMEs play an important role in the economy, employing vast numbers of people and helping to shape innovation. So when we have more competition and more of these companies building up and more of these small businesses building up, we help Latin America self-sustain themselves. And this would mean that we don't make them dependent on our aid, but instead focus on the root thing, small businesses that can help their economy flourish. Senator Chang, that's why it's not a huge concern that we're changing who the funding is going to. We're giving them to better companies that'll increase benefits and increase the benefits that Latin America actually gets to see. But Senator Zhang, you state that those people who are in relatively less poverty are still in enough poverty to want to leave. And this is regarding the point on how it'll stop mass immigration. But those people who are in relatively less poverty are still in enough poverty to want to leave. They're just able to afford leaving more. This is not proof of whether to affirm or fail this bill. What is proof, however, is what we see with small businesses and how they are more ethical, have more standards, as well as promote more competition, and therefore there's more businesses built and there are more long-term benefits for Latin America. If we take away the main reason people have to migrate, we have better economic opportunities and they don't have to escape the danger. So we do exactly what Senator Zhang wants and lessens mass immigration. Now, Senator Q also talks about how Latin America doesn't want aid, but they provide evidence of military personnel. They don't want aid that is forcing on them. They want monetary aid, which is what this bill gives. Pass this bill.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 59 seconds. Again, that is 2 minutes and 59 seconds. All cross-examiners, please rise. Senator Q.
Hi, Senator. In your speech, you stated that passing would help a small businesses flourish, correct?
Correct.
But do you have any specific evidence or a study that suggests that funding these small businesses worked before in the past?
In general, money helps small businesses.
But Senator, do you have any evidence that backs that point up?
Sure. You can just look to the United States. Sorry, you can just look to Princeton's survey that showed that these people actually get help. And
but
also,
these small businesses, and specifically, how would they help Latin America?
Thank you, Senator. Senator Chen.
Senator, you state that there are many ways today's bill provides benefits, but given under the Consolidation Amendment Act, it is technically illegal. How do you guys plan to pass?
Do you mind clarifying?
Under the Consolidation Amendment Act, today's passing of today's bill is illegal. So how do we plan to circumvent that?
No, I don't see how providing aid to small businesses and helping Latin America is illegal.
But under that act, we cannot take funding from the CARE Act, which is what we're doing, and putting it into another thing.
Thank you, Senators. Thank you, Senator Lamb. You may now be seated.
Thank you.
All right, to sing those speech on the affirmation, all negation speakers, please rise. Of those standing, Senator K. Chen, you have the floor.
I thank the chair for the chamber's reference. I am Senator K. Chen, spelled C-H-E-N, again, C-H-E-N. This is my second time speaking on the negation side. Time starts on my first word. Lao Tzu, a famous Chinese philosopher, once said, "If you give a hungry man a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime." This idea that learning how to do something is more effective than being spoon-fed can be applied to providing aid for Latin Americans. Simply handing a corrupt government money will not teach them how to use it to see the most benefits. For the following reasons, negate this bill. The overarching reason to fail is the utter lack of solvency. First, past precedent shows that aid will not work. According to the Congressional Research Service, the United States has long been a major contributor for foreign assistance to countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. Between fiscal year 1946 and fiscal year 2019, the United States provided $39.8 billion of assistance to the region. We have been providing financial aid to the LAC since 1946, but the countries are still facing tough challenges, and there is no clear evidence that past aid has been effective. The receiving country becomes dependent on external support, postponing or making slow progress on addressing the fundamental issue. In the case of the LAC, the issues are corruption, crime, drugs, and poverty. Since aid flows into highly corrupt governments, we have no doubt that much of it simply disappears. This proves that this bill has no benefits like the affirmation claims. But second, negate this bill because a 30% decline in migration is in no aspect achievable. Let's take a look at Section 3B of this bill. The United States of International Development will make sure a 30% decline of migration to the United States will occur. Senators Guo and Lung claim that new jobs will help citizens. However, they fail to see how unfeasible this goal is. Let me explain why. A 2018 study found that a 10% increase in assistance to help a country improves governance and social services would lower that country's emigration rate by only 1.6%. That is incomparable to this bill's goals. Other studies have found that governance and rural area development aid are associated with slight decreases in emigration rates, whereas other types of assistance don't help at all. This bill dedicates 40% of funding to small enterprises. Small companies are not going to help the overall state of living conditions, which will keep the residents to want to stay. Everyone knows the ideal situation for the LAC. But since the government will not comply, the aid provided just disappears. There are several programs that are already in place to help the region, yet none of them have worked. Adding another one in the midst of different programs is not going to be effective because it's just another standalone aid enhancement act. Do not allow the US to continue to spend money on unsuccessful aid. Thus, I urge you to negate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 49 seconds. Again, that is 2 minutes and 49 seconds. All cross-examiners, please rise, starting with Senator Liu.
Hi, Senator. How do you plan on helping the LAC then if your plan is to just say that none of these programs work? And also you're muted.
Yeah, well, my job isn't to come up with an alternative. I'm just saying that this specific bill will not
Your
be
job isn't to come up with an alternative. So your job is to take away these programs that help people without providing a solution.
No, I'm not taking away programs. I'm just not passing this one because this one's not going to be effective.
Yes, but you can't provide a better solution. So why can't we implement this now as a temporary solution?
Because it's not going to work.
Senator's cross-examination time has elapsed. Senator Cabra.
Hi, Senator. When it's been proved that USAID has made major progress in Latin America before, such as if lifting Brazil out of a hunger crisis, how can you say that past efforts in the area have not worked at all?
Okay, sure, some aid has worked, but this bill specifically, its goals are not to bring people out of, well, the goals are to bring people out of poverty, but its main goal is also to decrease migration, which will not work.
Its main goal is to uplift small businesses in Latin America and create jobs and lessen poverty and hunger in Latin America. So you tell me.
Thank you, Senators. All right, thank you, Senator K. Chen, and you may now be seated. So seeing as our speech on the negation, we completed full
Just a quick point of
cycle.
order.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I believe I had precedence over Senator Cabra for questioning, as I have 3
I'm sorry,
questions and she had 4.
I didn't see you raising your placard. I saw Senator Cabra, I saw Senator Lamb, Senator Guo. I must have just overlooked you. I'm really sorry.
It's
all
fine.
right. Do we have any further motions? Okay, seeing none, we're now moving into an affirmation speech. All affirmative speakers, please rise. Senator Liu, you have the floor.
I thank the chair. For the reference of the chamber and judges, my name is Senator Liu, speaking for the first time this legislative round. I will be timing myself, but I recognize the PO's time is official. And if I see or hear no indication that people are not ready, then I will begin shortly. I will assume everyone is ready then.
Give me 1 second, sorry.
Oh, of course. All right, thank you. When the countries with the highest rates of femicide are in Latin America, it is imperative we pass to help women of color who live in a strictly patriarchal system with gender-based discrimination escape their chains. First, what no senator before me has mentioned is how this legislation prevents Latin American countries from turning to the IMF or International Monetary Fund. In the status quo, Oxfam International in 2020 explains that in 84% of IMF loans encourage or require poor countries hard hit by the economic fallout from the pandemic to adopt more austerity measures in the aftermath of the health crisis. Figures from the Jubilee debt campaign in 2020 show that 64 lower income governments spend more on external debt payments to pay back the IMF than to actually spend on healthcare. But this leads to the most important impact in today's debate, one not realized by negation senators like Senator Q and Chang, who claim to have their constituents' quality of life in their minds. It harms local women. The Guardian in 2019 quotes, "The IMF pushes regressive and direct taxes that disproportionately target women instead of going after the immense wealth of companies and the taxes that they avoid." Oxford and Cambridge researchers find that programs on average reduce health spending by 1.7% of GDP, on which women disproportionately rely on. Thus, if Senators Q, Chang, and K. Chen really care about their foreign constituents, they pass to save women of color from being stripped of what little rights they have in a patriarchal country. Second, Senator Lung can't explain why we trust this bill to work, and Senators Chang and K. Chen believe these programs fail. Allow me to prove them wrong. USAID is an incredibly effective organization, specifically because it will be able to help LGBTQ plus members in a region where they are marginalized and discriminated against. Just 2 weeks ago, the 2022 Interagency Report on the Implementation of the Presidential Memorandum reported over the past year, USAID-supported programs reached almost 700,000 LGBTQ plus folks with health services in the LAC region. And when the Journal of International Health and Human Rights in 2021 explains the majority of Caribbean countries prohibit same-sex acts between consenting adults, do not have equal marriage, and are not allowed to adopt, it is only more important that we affirm, because the impact is USAID's support of the LGBTQ is beneficial, because the World Bank explained in 2017, homophobia and transphobia across the region has directly hindered economic development in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thus, the burden falls on every negation senator in this chamber who tries to argue this will only backtrack the economy to justify how failing will help both the economy of LAC and LGBTQ plus folks. Senators, I don't want you to affirm for me. I don't want you to affirm for Senators Guo, Long, or Elam, because we don't live in a Latin American country. I want you to affirm for the women who are killed for being women. I want you to affirm for the LGBTQ plus folks like myself in LAC countries who cannot be themselves in their home, where they are supposed to feel supported and safe and accepted. Thus, you affirm for them, not me.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes exactly. Again, that is 3 minutes. All cross-examiners, please rise, starting with Senator Long.
Hi, Senator. Great speech. So could you please explain how passing this bill will directly help LGBTQ plus members?
Great. So this bill uses USAID direct aid, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to take that as a yes. So over the past years, USAID programs, like programs that they aid in, have helped almost 700,000 members of LGBTQ plus folks reach health
But
services.
how does that apply to Latin America?
Because it was in Latin American countries.
But who is controlling these funds? Aren't the governments who are
USAID.
putting laws against
It was
LGBTQ
USAID run
plus
programs
members?
in Latin American countries.
All right, thank you, Senator Park.
Hi, Senator. Bouncing off that last question, where in this legislation or in any of its lines does it states that aid will actually be going towards these populations?
Sorry, what was the last word?
Where in this legislation does it prove that this aid would go to those populations?
It's not specifically going to one part of a population, it's helping everyone. And when a large portion of that
Well, exactly,
population,
Senator. This legislation is directly focused towards small businesses. As my side has already proven, that's
but
flawed.
it's directed to everyone. Everyone will be benefited from the help of USAID.
All right, thank you. So seeing our speech on the affirmation, all negation speakers, please rise. Out of those standing, Senator Xiang, you have the floor.
I thank the chair. Just give me a moment to get set up. All right, hello everyone. This is Senator Xiang, spelled Xiang, speaking for the second time this legislative session. As always, I'm at the leisure of those above me. So an indication when the PO is ready and the judges are ready, and I'll begin. Great. We, as members of the United States Congress, are some of the most privileged people on earth, but our neighbors to the south are struggling. Tonight, there will be thousands of children who go to bed hungry. Tonight, there will be thousands of children who do not have a bed to go to. And tonight, there will be thousands of children who cannot go to sleep at all because their communities are racked with violence. It is because today's legislation only darkens their night that we must negate. First, I want to take the affirmation at its highest ground and grant that this legislation lowers poverty. Now, Senator Chen on my side tells you that this doesn't drive down migration rates, but I want to take this a step further because this actually drives up our migration rates. Because in order to migrate, families need money. And this simple fact is supported by the Princeton PhD candidate, Hannah Postel, who finds that foreign aid is directly linked to increases in migration from Latin America. The UN furthers that migration has increased over 137% over the past 20 years, meaning that even if the affirmation's arguments do come true, we still are faced with higher migration rates. Here's how that affects the rest of the affirmation's solvency. Senators, I want to direct you to Section 3B, the most important section of today's legislation. This section mandates that the 40% of the $400 million we give are dependent on reducing migration by 30%. In cross, Senator Guo clings to 3B as the last shred of solvency. But I just proved that our funding only increases migration even further, which means that for this 40% for SMEs get cut off after not even a year. But in these short months, this will do lasting damage to Latin American lives, because the William Davidson Institute reports that SMEs need at least 5 years to reach sustainability. However, our funding doesn't even last a year. What this means is that our one-time cash injection deceives Latin Americans into believing that we will help them sustain SMEs if they open them. And the impact of this is contrary to what Senator Lamb claims about sustainability. Because first, we will only see a short-term boom in the number of SMEs because they're propped up by our funding, but then followed by an immediate bust when we inevitably fail to meet our 30% criteria. Senator Guo asks why this is harmful. Here's why. Because this bill essentially increases the number of SMEs from the current status quo, which means we essentially exacerbate the problem right before we pull our funding and run. The affirmation's impacts happen, if at all, in the short term, when what SMEs need right now is long-term sustainability. Tonight, thousands of children will be suffering. But pass this legislation and give them a brighter tomorrow to wake up to.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Again, that is 2 minutes and 50 seconds. All cross-examiners, please rise, starting with Senator Liu.
Hi, Senator. What solution do you propose instead of this?
Well, there's multiple ways that we can address these problems specifically. However, the way that this legislation is crafted, which puts our aid contingent on 30% migration reduction, means that we only worsen the situation for everyone.
But what's wrong with these people migrating? I mean, if they aren't content with their government, why aren't they?
It's great that they're coming to the U.S. to seek opportunities. However, the way
Who said they're coming to the U.S.?
The way we worded this legislation ensures that everyone back home will have to suffer.
Yes, but
it's not their fault.
I'm saying that it's the legislation's fault. Senator Fan.
Senator, bouncing off the previous line of questioning, why is having immigration bad?
I'm not saying the immigration is bad. I'm saying that failing to meet the 30% criteria that we set in this legislation leads to SMEs not receiving the funding they need, which only exacerbates the economic.
And why would bolstering the economy not decrease immigration?
Because I proved to you in my speech that federal funding is directly linked to increases in migration, and we're already experiencing 137% increases in migration from Latin America.
All right, I was muted. Sorry. Thank you, senators. Thank you, Senator Xiang. You may now be seated. So seeing as all the speech on the negation, we've completed a full cycle. Are there any motions on the floor? Motions. Okay. Seeing none, hearing none, all affirmation speakers, please rise. Senator Cabra, you stand unopposed.
I thank the chair for the reference of the chamber. My name is Senator Cabra, spelled K-A-B-R-A, again, K-A-B-R-A. If I may have permission to time myself? Yeah, but I recognize that the PO's time is official.
Sorry, I didn't hear you there. Were you asking if you could time yourself?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Judges and PO, please just give me some sort of indication whenever you're ready. Thank you. In 2021, roughly 111 million of Latin America's 588 million inhabitants lived in slums. The prevalence of hunger in Latin America and the Caribbean now stands at 9.1%, the highest it has been in the last 15 years. Environmental changes, persistent inequality, and increasing violence continue to force millions of people throughout the region to live in a constant state of uncertainty. Senators, inaction on this crisis is treason, and it is for the people of Latin America that I strongly affirm this bill today. First, funding Latin American small businesses will greatly uplift Latin American economies. Senator Lamb was questioned about how small businesses would help the economy and could not answer, but let me explain why it does. According to the World Economic Forum in March of 2021, small and medium-sized businesses have a fundamental economic role in Latin America, though their funding needs are often overlooked. with the IADB showing that these businesses create 67% of employment in the region, but receive only 12% of total credit. Senator Jiang, funding right now is exactly what these small businesses need. And the probability that the US can't afford to make the 30% criteria is very, very low. Small businesses play a huge role in the Latin American economy, and supporting them will lead to the creation of millions of jobs, uplift millions out of poverty and hunger. If we continue to leave them underfunded, we continue to ignore the people of Latin America. Second, senators on the negation claim that historically monetary assistance and funding towards Latin America hasn't worked. Specifically, Senator Chang and Kay Chen claim that US aid is ineffective, but let's understand why this is completely false. According to the Borgen Project, in July 2019, US aid in particular has facilitated political, economic, and social development in Latin America on a massive scale since 1962. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, US aid helped solve Brazil's food crisis by funding the Brazilian Agricultural Research Corporation and transferred Brazil from a struggling food producer to becoming the third largest agricultural producer in the world. US aid disaster relief also became crucial for rebuilding parts of the country after a devastating earthquake in 1985. Now, Senator Q states that Latin America does not wish for US aid and does not need aid, while also conceding that funding from the US directly lowered poverty rates in Latin America. But let's further prove why this is undeniably false. According to the Center of Strategic and International Studies in April 22 of 2021, Latin America's political transformation since the 1990s has been profound. It is now the region of the world with the highest proportion of democratically elected government outside Europe and North America. So no, Senator Q and Senator Chang, Latin American governments want change and need change and are willing to work for change. When we look at the impacts of the affirmation, we must realize that the lives of millions of Latin Americans clearly outweigh the negation's empty concerns of corruption and migrations. The lives of millions lie at stake today. Pass for the future of Latin America. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 8 seconds. Again, that is 3 minutes and 8 seconds. All cross-examiners, please rise. Starting with Senator Xiao.
I thank the chair. Hi, Senator, I like your speech. So are we not meeting this 30% criteria because we can't afford to, or because our funding inherently raises migration rates?
That's your point, isn't it? My point is that we can afford it and we can.
I agree that we definitely can afford things. We can afford a lot of things, but is it physically possible for us to meet this 30% reduction rate?
Yes, it is. I don't see that anything else would be a cause of concern aside
right
from
now we're increasing by 137%. What is this legislation?
Senator Chang.
Senator, how do USAID distribute funds?
You tell me.
Through non-governmental organization. And what prevents narco groups from posing as non-governmental organizations?
Well, I'm assuming that USA does background checks on the NGOs that it gives money to, and just not is not just throwing money at organizations without knowing what they do.
It actually doesn't. For example, when we sent aid over in Afghanistan, terrorist groups posed as NGOs, so it prevents narco groups.
Well, interception. There are many measures we can take towards avoiding interception.
But is it outlined in the bill today?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Senator Copper, and you may now be seated. Seeing as all the speech on the affirmation, all negation speakers, please rise.
Really quickly, sorry to interrupt, but as long as there aren't hiccups in speaking order, Tab says that the hard stop is extended indefinitely. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that after the cycle, because I think this would bring us to 2:31 Pacific time. All right, so I see Senator Fan, Senator Park. Senator Fan, you have the floor.
All right, I think the chair. Get myself situated. All right. Hi, I'm Senator Fan, speaking for the second and last time in today's legislative session. If I could get any indication that my PO and judges are ready. Good. All right.
In 2017, the Office of Refugee Resettlement lost track of 1,500 unaccompanied children. And then this agency, whose very duty is to oversee the protection of these children, had the audacity to say that they were not legally responsible for them. It is the very bare minimum that we should be responsible for the lives of millions of people in Latin America. To truly protect them, we must negate. Now, the affirmation championed by Senator Long and Senator Lamb tell us that we help SMEs. And Senator Guo, Lamb, and Cabra state the use of past precedents as this program being effective. However, let me make the most important distinction in this round. This legislation's funding mechanism is fundamentally different from previous examples of USAID. Conventionally, USAID programs go through independent NGOs. However, today's legislation goes directly through these governments, destroying any of the effective measures and oversight that USAID possesses. And that's why today's debate has boiled down to a question of oversight. So let me be the very first to definitively settle that debate. Under Section 3A, which Senator Guo champions as providing oversight, it states the renewal of supplemental funding shall be contingent on verification of proper use from monthly reportings through these various governments. The issue is that these governments' reporting are endemically corrupt. They are authoritarian states and that have entrenched, at least that have undermined their political systems. As Latin America has lost $13 billion a year to graft, you are essentially asking some of the most corrupt governments in the entire world to verify their own accountability. Senator Guo, how can we ensure that this is proper use of funding? It would take a miracle for these governments to make accurate reports and even more of a miracle for the funding to be allocated properly. Essentially, there is no oversight and we give these governments a blank check. Every affirmative impact falls. Now, the affirmation paints a very rosy picture that we solve all of Latin America's problems, their poverty, their infrastructure, and their crime. But let me paint a more realistic picture. We empower corrupt governance because we don't demand funding accountability, but we do demand an immigration crackdown. Under Section 3B, as Senator Xiang already tells you, verification of efficacy is shown in a 30% decline in migration. What does this mean? We uphold authoritarianism with a stamp of American support only if they decrease migration, regardless of the ethics or legitimacy of their actions. What is the impact of this? We pressure countries that don't have the capacity for asylum systems or preparations for addressing mass migration to crack down. That means that we only fuel the fire existing in Latin America, and civilians are the ones who burn. I'm not against human rights, but when we force these governments to use force to crack down on migration and increase spending in police and border control, that's where
Thank
I
you,
draw the
Senator.
line.
Your time is up. Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Again, that is 3 minutes and 10 seconds. All cross-examiners, please rise. So, Senator Lamb, you have the floor.
Hi, so you tell us about corruption. Is that not the entire reason our government is going to regulate this, or not regulate, but we're going to check up on this and then decide?
Right, and the issue I tell you is that the measures we use to check, quote unquote, is like it completely fails. It's contradictory at best.
Okay, but if we invest more in the economy, that would decrease the push factor of migration.
Right, but we're not investing in the economy because we're essentially allowing these governments free reign.
How is
Thank you, senators. Senator Liu.
So you brought up the lost children, but those children were lost under the Trump administration, which is drastically different since that was a Borden situation. So how does your point still stand?
I don't believe that's relevant to my speech.
I believe it is incredibly relevant if you bring up lost children, but the children were lost under a different president and a different administration regarding different things.
But that's irrelevant to my point about funding accountability. What I'm saying is that under this legislation, there's no mechanism for oversight or accountability, which means that you, like these governments, you essentially empower these authoritarian.
Yeah, but there was no accountability over that because it wasn't related. So how does that
Thank
relate
you,
to
Senator
this?
Crossman. Time has elapsed. Thank you, Senator Fan. You may now be seated. So seeing as the speech on the negation, we are now due for anyone who wishes to speak on the affirmation. All those who wish to speak, please rise. Again, I'm calling all affirmation speakers. All right, seeing as there are no affirmation speakers, all negation speakers, please rise. Senator Park, you stand unopposed.
I thank the chair. For the reference of the chambers and judges above me, again, it's really simple. Senator Park, P-A-R-K, speaking for the second and definitely last time of today's legislative session. Just any word from the judges and PO if they're not ready. I'll assume everybody is. And I'll also be timing myself again. I acknowledge the PO's time is official. My first word. In this debate, the affirmations points have all revolved around the potential benefits that this legislation provides. However, potentiality and probability isn't something that this Congress should rely on when passing legislation. So today, fail this legislation because of the fact that one, this creates strong economic reliance on the United States, further leading to detriments for my constituents. And second, this legislation is designed to fail, diminishing every human impact that the affirmative try to bring. So first, let's cut all of the fat and get straight down to the bones of this debate today. This debate centers around two major questions that determine which side has won. First and foremost, how much human impact would this legislation have? And second, whether or not this legislation would have a lasting economic impression on the LAC area. I'll crystallize why exactly these two questions are answered favorably by the negation. Let's go all the way back to the beginning and consider the foundations of debates that Senator Guo set. Senator Guo contends that this legislation directly benefits the constituents of the LAC area because giving aid and quoting Senator Lamb, improving aid would spell economic benefits for these people. However, economic benefits are for naught when they come with the venomous contingency of economic reliance to the United States. While senators on my side has touched the subject, I'll provide the explicit statistics that prove so. The NATO Association of Canada published in a 2020 study that shows that foreign aid introduces volatility into the economy as governments do not take appropriate economic actions to maintain stability and growth, such as using foreign aid as an alternative to taxation. What more, Senators Guo, Lamb, Long, and Cabra, governments are not incentivized to promote growth within markets and achieve set goals, causing the economy to freeze, negatively impacting social development. My side has contended time and time again throughout the entire debate that this legislation cannot provide economic benefits. There goes the affirmation's economic impact. And furthermore, senators on the AF, Senator Kay Chen and Shang explicitly tells you increased economic opportunity doesn't lead to massive decreases of migration, which is a major contingency of this legislation. Senator Cabra would be pouring $400 million into a program that has little, if any, benefits that will be lasting, with the impending doom of the legislation hindering its little efficiency. I love that we as a Congress want to help constituents of the LAC area. However, every senator on the AF is blindsided to the fact that this money is coming from our constituents. Our constituents are the ones who will bear the brunt of this economic investment. Senator Liu, your passionate appeal to the women and LGBTQ population of the LAC area doesn't strike the hearts of the negation when we recognize that this legislation harms our constituents' well-being first. Fail.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 9 seconds. Again, that is 3 minutes and 9 seconds. All cross-examiners, please rise. Starting with Senator Guo.
Hi, so you talk about migration, but why is it necessarily a net harm for people to leave a corrupt and oppressive government?
Well, Senator, as I already stated, one of this legislation's major contingency of continued funding is for migration to directly decrease.
Okay, so if people earn enough money to migrate out, do we really still need to continue that much funding?
Well, Senator, as I've already explained with hard statistics, this legislation doesn't incentivize market growth.
How come? I proved in my speech that this helps.
Because, Senator, these governments don't take proper economic actions to ensure this growth.
All right, thank you, Senator Long.
Thank you. Hi, Senator. Great speech. So what will happen to the economy of Latin America and the Caribbean if we don't do anything?
Well, Senator, if we don't do anything, there will It will go down, but it's going to go down at a significantly slower rate than what would happen under this legislation.
How much slower?
Senator, you can tell me.
No, I'm asking you how much slower.
Well, Senator, if I had to guess, probably double or triple.
No. Well, if we don't provide funding, then I proved in my speech that the GDP will drop by like $900 million within the next.
All right,
10
thank
years.
you, senators. Thank you, Senator Park. You may now be seated. So seeing as all the speech on the negation, do we have any affirmation speakers? Seeing none, hearing none, do we have any motions? Senator Capra.
Motion to move to previous question.
Seconds.
Second.
Second.
Any and all opposed? All right, seeing none, this motion passes. We will now be moving on to previous question. Also, all those who wish to pass this legislation today, please raise your placards and keep it up till I say your name. 1, Cabra, 2, Q, 3, Long, 4, Lamb, 5, Hua, 6, Lu. All who wish to fail? 1, Fan, 2, Chen, 3, Xiang, 4, Chang, 5, Park. So if it was split from 6 to 5 with no abstentions, this legislation passes. My congratulations to sponsorship speaker Guo and the entire affirmation side. Do we have any final motions? Senator Guo.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconds.
Second.
Any and all opposed? All right, seeing none, this motion passes. Congress is now adjourned. Congratulations, everybody, and good luck. There aren't really any more rounds, but good luck just in general. And thank you for letting me preside over this round. Thank you to the judges and the parliamentarian. And then also thank you to Senator Liu for presiding over the first half.
Thank you, presiding officer. It was an honor to serve with you.
Thank you. So
All
then
right.
just, oh, sorry, parliamentarian, go ahead.
No, it's okay. We're going to give orders of the day, or
Yeah. Okay. So in total, in this entire session, we had 22 speeches and 52 questions. Senator Liu and I each had half, 11 speeches and 26 questions. Everybody except the 2 presiding officers got to speak twice. And everybody except for me got 4 or 5 questions. So yeah, it was a pretty successful round. We passed 2 pieces of legislation and failed 0. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, POs. Everyone give a round of applause to yourselves for not only making it through middle school TOC as a whole, but this round, which has almost been 3 hours. It's truly a feat for all of you, including the judges. So yeah, with that being said, I will make sure that there's nothing really pressing. Judges, remember to submit your ballots and ranks as soon as possible. Tab, I see you're here. Did you want to say something?
Yes. Can the judges please stick around? None of the judges leave this Zoom, please. As for the competitors, thank you all for a great round. We're going to try to do awards at 6:15. So can competitors come back to this Zoom at about 6:10 Eastern time, okay? 6:10, all competitors back to the Zoom. Okay, great. Thank you all. You're free to go. Competitors, judges, do not leave. Stay here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
And thank you
everyone.
for judges too.
Thank you so much to all the judges.
And thank you to Tab for organizing this.
Just really
Of course.
quickly, that would be 3:10 PST.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Bye.
And then can we end the live stream, Casey, if you're there? If not, we'll wait for that. But judges, just please stick around. And once you've submitted, we need your ballot submitted like as soon as possible. You can work on your comments after you've submitted the ballot too. But as soon as you've submitted it, tell me here on Zoom, and then I'll confirm, and then you're free to go. Okay.
I submitted.
I submitted as well.
That was Sarah, you and Tyler who said that. You are both free to go. I've gotten it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I submitted. Quest.
I've received it. Thank you.
Cool.
Jamil, I just sent you the PO form. Can you just fill it out on there? And it says semifinals on the question, but just in your answer, can you put just put finals and then put the name?
Yeah, you want me to submit what on it? Oh, PO, yeah, PO choice, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I submitted.
I also submitted my ballot.
I received both your ballots. Thank you.
Okay. I just submitted my ballot.
Let me make sure it came through. Yep. Okay. I received it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.